Welcome to r/entitled parents, where Karen completely loses it on Christmas. Am I the jerk for ruining the Christmas dinner by refusing to cook? We flew across the US to spend Christmas with my mother-in-law and brother-in-law's family. It's been a crazy year juggling a toddler and starting a new business, so we booked the trip last minute, unsure if we'd even have the energy to travel. Honestly, I kind of wish we hadn't. For some background, my mother-in-law is the kind of person you tread lightly around. Authoritarian doesn't even begin to cover it. She's quick to blow up over the smallest things, which means everyone ends up walking on eggshells around her. She's already ruined her fair share of Christmases in the past, so we went in with pretty low expectations. Anyway, in the weeks leading up to the trip, she decided that I should cook duck for Christmas dinner. She didn't ask me like, hey, would you be up for this? It was more like, by the way, I bought a duck and you're cooking it. Whatever. I didn't love being voluntold, but I figured, fine, it's Christmas, I'll play along. Her grand plan didn't stop there. She also decided my wife would be cooking a bunch of dishes too. So basically, she wanted her big Christmas dinner, but with none of the actual work. Fast forward to our arrival. We get to her house first, just me, my wife, our toddler, and mother-in-law. At first, things are fine. She's in a good mood, welcoming us in, chatting, and acting normal. We start prepping the food. For one of the dishes mother-in-law asked my wife to make, she had bought the completely wrong ingredients. My wife, being the chill person she is, just laughed it off and says she'll make it work. Mother-in-law, in true dramatic fashion, says something like, well, the show must go on. It's fine if you don't make it. Cool, whatever. But my wife decides to give it a shot anyway. While she's cooking, my other brother-in-law calls. I end up chatting with him for about 10 minutes, stepping out on the porch for part of it to catch up. When I come back inside, he asks to talk to my wife and asks what she's cooking. I pan the camera over to the pot and he chuckles, clearly recognizing that the ingredients aren't right. He jokingly asks, what's going on there? We all laugh about it because, you know, it's funny. Cue mother-in-law completely losing it. She starts yelling, I already said it wasn't a big deal, so why are we still talking about it? Like she's properly shouting at this point. Then she turns on my wife, accusing her of dragging her brother into it. She even throws some shade my way, implying that I must have been in on this grand scheme to embarrass her. It's just ridiculous. Right as the tension is peaking, my other brother-in-law walks in with his family. Suddenly, mother-in-law dials it back, but not before telling them that she's upset about something vague. The whole mood is awkward, but she pretends everything is fine once she has an audience. A couple of hours later, I'd had enough. I told her straight up, I'm not cooking anything today. She tried to gaslight me, saying, my anger was directed at your wife, not you. If you feel guilty, that's on you. Yeah, okay, lady. She kept pushing, but I stood my ground. No duck for me. That left her stuck in the kitchen for an extra 3 hours, which honestly felt like a little Christmas karma. So, am I the jerk for refusing to cook after that? I kind of think she had it coming. Not the jerk. Don't waste another holiday with people who make you miserable. Life is short. Spend your time with those who appreciate you. I used to hate spending Christmas with my parents. I honestly thought I hated Christmas. Then I got fed up with the stress and anxiety it brought me every year. Why do we put ourselves through this? We now just spend Christmas at home with the kids every year. No traveling, no packing, just family and food. And I actually don't mind Christmas anymore. Am I the jerk for leaving my husband and stepdaughter stranded on Christmas when I found out he gave her my big Christmas gift? My husband, who's 41, is genuinely awful at giving gifts. We've been together for over 3 years, and after the first year of receiving nothing for my birthday, anniversary, Christmas, or even Valentine's Day, I'd had enough. Mother's Day was the final straw. When I brought it up, he told me, you're not my mother. That was it. I decided to match his energy moving forward. Father's Day rolled around, and I decided not to lift a finger. Normally, I'd prepare a big lunch or dinner and drive 30 to 45 minutes to pick up his daughter, A, who's 16, so that they could spend the day together. But this time, I made my own plans. Around midday, he called, asking when I was picking up his daughter. I said, I have plans. I wasn't told I needed to pick her up. He snapped back, but it's Father's Day. So I hit him with his own line, you're not my father. I expected him to blow up, and he did, raising his voice immediately. I calmly told him to check the table and hung up. On the table was a letter I'd written explaining how hurt I was by the lack of reciprocation for all I'd done. Later, he called to apologize and promised to do better. For context, he's a truck driver, and the vehicle we use for everything is mine. Over time, he improved slightly. His version of gifting became, go pick something out and I'll pay for it, which I didn't mind too much. He started doing the same for his daughter. I also took on the role of shopping for his family's gifts for birthdays and holidays. A week before Christmas, I woke up to a nice surprise. He brought me my favorite coffee and took me out for breakfast. Then we went to the mall so I could pick out my Christmas gift. I rarely spend money on myself. I have a preteen son from a previous marriage and most of my focus is on him. Meanwhile, my stepdaughter is very materialistic and constantly asks for money or expensive things, and she always gets them from one family member or another. I'd been saving up for months for a designer purse I really wanted. When we got to the store, there it was, my dream purse. My husband hesitated when he saw the price, so I told him I'd pitch in with the money I had saved. He shook his head and said, "You deserve it, I'll get it for you." He added that this would be my only chance since it was expensive, and I agreed. I didn't need anything else. Afterwards, he asked if I was okay with him picking up his daughter to take her Christmas shopping. That worked out fine since I had a ton of holiday prep to do at home. When we got back, I reached for my purse, but he stopped me. He said he had already bought another gift to put inside the purse for me to open on Christmas morning. I was thrilled and left it with him. The days leading up to Christmas were a blur. I hosted Christmas Eve for my family, then on Christmas morning we headed out to pick up his daughter and spend the day at his mom's house. I was exhausted and fell asleep in the car. When I woke up, his daughter was in the back seat rummaging through my new purse. "Where did you get that purse?" I asked, my voice sharp. Silence. I asked again, louder this time. She mumbled, "My dad gave it to me." I lost it. "You what?" I yelled, turning to my husband. He didn't say a word, just stared at the road. I told her to give it back immediately, but she refused. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and total betrayal. My husband pulled over at a gas station, and his daughter bolted out of the car with the purse. When he tried to comfort me, I pushed him away. Through tears, he explained that after he dropped me off that day, he picked her up for shopping. She had spotted the purse and begged for it, saying he had never gotten her anything nice and this would make up for it. He gave in. I reminded him that she wasn't lacking. She had gifts from her mom, stepdad, and their families, plus everything we had already bought her. That purse was my one gift. He just kept apologizing, but I couldn't hear it. While he was inside the gas station, I looked at the back seat filled with gifts I had thoughtfully picked out for his family, and something inside me snapped. I moved to the driver's seat, took off my phone, and drove to my cousin's house, leaving him and his daughter at the gas station. Later, I got a hateful voicemail from his daughter's mom, accusing me of being jealous of a teenager. I called her back, explaining the truth, and told her to save her apologies. The damage was already done. My husband's brother ended up picking them up. His mom sided with him, but his brother, sister-in-law, and other family members supported me. Since then, I haven't spoken to his daughter. At home, things are tense. I've grown distant, only cooking and talking with my son. I can't bring myself to forgive my husband. At night, I cry when he reaches for me. I'm not even angry anymore. I just feel numb. I miss him when he's on the road, but the betrayal still lingers. I don't know if I can get past this. What would you do? Not the jerk. Your husband absolutely dropped the ball here. You were so excited about that purse, something you saved for and dreamed of, and he just handed it off like it was nothing. That was your one special gift, and instead of standing up for you, he let himself get guilted by his daughter who already had plenty coming her way. It's not about the purse. It's about the complete disregard for your feelings and the effort you put into making the holiday special for everyone else. You've been more than patient, and honestly, I'm impressed you didn't do more than just drive off. You're right to feel hurt, and he needs to wake up and realize how badly he let you down. Are you the jerk for leaving them stranded? Yes, you don't just leave people stranded, but y'all have way bigger issues that need addressing. Were they really stranded though? Come on, it's an adult man with money and a cell phone and his teenage daughter in a gas station. They were inconvenienced at best. Everyone sucks here. This is so trashy in general. He's the main jerk, but pinching pennies and saving up to invest in a brand new designer purse? That's something you buy when you have tons of money in the bank and want to show it off. This is the most American post I've read in a while. Elderly neighbor lady banging on my door, then trying to force her way into my house. My neighborhood is full of people who think they're entitled and don't know boundaries. Let me tell you about one of the worst offenders, my elderly neighbor, Doris. She was a friend of my dad's, and since I moved back to take care of my parents before they passed, I kind of inherited her as a neighbor. Her husband passed away a few years ago, and since then, she's been a mix of quirky and downright frustrating. We've always had this unspoken, and sometimes spoken, rule. Call before you come over. Simple, right? I mean, I barely ever get to her place, but if I do, I call first. She brought it up herself a few years ago, which I thought was weird because I already did that. Whatever. I agreed because it's just common courtesy, and I thought we were on the same page. Turns out, Doris operates on a totally different wavelength. The other day, I was in the bathroom. Nothing glamorous, just dealing with some health stuff. It was around 10 a.m. when I hear this absolutely furious pounding on my front door. Not a polite knock, but the kind of banging that makes you think someone's trying to break in. My dog was losing it, barking like crazy, and I was scrambling to get myself together. About 15 seconds later, more pounding. Then again, another round. The door was shaking so hard I could see it vibrating. I thought maybe it was DoorDash. The app wasn't working, so I couldn't track the delivery, but I figured, who else would be this aggressive? Even then, I was ready to give the driver a piece of my mind for pounding like that. I finally get to the door, and when I open it, there's Doris. She's bundled up so heavily at first, I couldn't even tell it was her. Here's the kicker. She was there for a Christmas card. The day before, I told her I got a card meant for her in my mailbox and that I'd bring it over the next day after calling her. But apparently, Doris couldn't wait. She walked over in the snow to retrieve her Christmas card. As I'm standing there trying to process her audacity, I noticed my DoorDash driver awkwardly standing behind her, holding my food. At first, I thought they were together, but no, just a weird coincidence. Doris, meanwhile, is oblivious. I grab the card from the little bucket by my door, hand it to her, and then she tries to open my screen door. Now, my dog is right there, ready to bolt. I quickly pull the screen door closed, and I tell her not to open it. Does she listen? Of course not. She tries again, and I'm practically wrestling with the door at this point. I finally have to say, Doris, the dog is going to get out. She backs off, and that's when she finally notices the DoorDash driver, who looks like he just stepped into a circus. After Doris leaves, I feel terrible for the driver. I text her an apology and add an extra tip because, honestly, no one should have to witness that mess. This isn't even the first time Doris has done something like this. She's shown up unannounced at least twice before, even when I had a sign on the door specifically asking people not to. If I don't answer right away, she just bangs harder, which sends my dog into a frenzy and gets me all worked up. The problem is, Doris is one of the last neighbors I can sort of rely on. The one on the right got mad because I reported her for burning garbage all the time, and the one on the left was already annoyed when I put up a fence. I'm running out of people to call in case of an emergency, so I can't afford to make Doris mad. And let me tell you, she can be vengeful when she's upset. I don't know how to get through to her. We've had the call first talk so many times, but she just ignores it. Any advice? Because at this point, I'm ready to just pretend I'm not home every time she shows up. Sounds like dementia. The only other thing than just dealing with it like you've been doing is to not answer the door. You reward her behavior every time you answer the crazy knocking. If she gets no payoff, she might stop coming over without calling first. Sorry, but you're kind of stuck. Edward the Great. When I moved back to the US, I took a job at a large firm and I ended up doing a lot of executive assistant tasks. My boss regularly sent me to the local bank downstairs to deposit or withdraw cash. Since I needed to open an account for direct deposits anyway, it made sense to set it up at the same branch. One day, I went to open the account, and the branch manager sat me down to go through the paperwork. She was polite enough, and the process was straightforward. But when it came to the signature, I decided to have a little fun. Inspired by a Roman documentary I'd watched the night before, I wrote my signature as Edward the Great. The manager didn't even blink. She just processed the paperwork and told me that they'd call when my card was ready. Fast forward a few days and I got a call from her. She says there's an issue with my paperwork because my signature isn't valid and that I need to redo it with my actual name. Annoyed, but curious, I agreed to come back. Her insistence annoyed me because I had seen plenty of signatures that didn't resemble letters at all, and they were still accepted. So I did some digging and discovered that legally, a signature can be any consistent mark, not even letters. Armed with printed laws, I went to the bank to argue my case. When I arrived, I told her I wanted to keep my signature as is and handed over the printed documents. She wasn't thrilled and said she needed to check with her superiors. A few minutes later, she returned, saying I was right about the law, but that the bank required the signature to match the one on my driver's license. I told her I was planning to adopt a new signature, but she stood firm. That's when I realized I had an opportunity for some malicious compliance. Since I had just moved to a new state, I needed to update my license anyway. So I booked an appointment with the DMV and prepped everything for the big day. At the DMV, when it was time to sign, I proudly wrote, "Edward the Great." The clerk immediately told me I couldn't use that and to stop joking around. I calmly pulled out the printed law. After a few minutes of grumbling, they let me proceed, and I walked out with a shiny new license bearing my glorious new signature. I went straight back to the bank, showed them my updated ID, and agreed to sign the forms with the signature on my license. The manager, looking smug, set me down to redo the paperwork. When I signed Edward the Great, she nearly exploded. She started ranting about wasting their time and threatened to kick me out. That's when I slid my license across the desk. Watching her face go completely blank was chef's kiss. She asked me to wait while she made some calls. 10 minutes later, she returned and said while my signature was valid, the bank was refusing to open my account. Not sure if they could actually do that, I accepted defeat and went back upstairs to tell my boss. He laughed so hard when I told him the full story and said he'd take care of it. Later that day, I got a call from the bank saying they had reconsidered and my account was now open. Turns out, my boss had a little chat with the branch manager and threatened to move all of his accounts to another bank if they didn't resolve the issue. That apparently lit a fire under them. Now, every time I sign something official, I get to proudly use Edward the Great. It's silly, sure, but it's my little victory and a great story to tell. My entitled mom tries to force me to clean my room on a Saturday. I, 16 female, live with my mom who's 47. We've always had very different ways of living. I prefer to let things get really messy and then clean them up, and she prefers to clean as she goes. As a high school student taking a couple of advanced classes, my week can get pretty stressful, and I figured out early in the year that I need something to look forward to during the week, aka what I call a rest day, where I do absolutely nothing at all but read, watch TV, and eat snacks. Right now, this day is a Saturday, as I have school during the week and I work on Sundays. My mom has never understood this. Today, Saturday, I agreed to do a couple of small chores but stopped there. Earlier, she asked me to clean off my dresser in bed, a task that would take at least an hour, so I politely told her that today is my rest day and I'm not doing it. Also, my neck and arm are really hurting because I apparently did something while doing another chore, so I wasn't having it. She got upset and said that it wouldn't take me that long and I should just do it. I told her no, repeating that I need one day a week to just decompress and do nothing. She then started yelling that in that case, I need to pick a day to do cleaning. I decided on Wednesday, as that's normally my most free day of the week. She then started lecturing me that she doesn't want to hear me complain come Wednesday. A few hours later, she saw me on the couch watching a movie while she was mopping and said, "You know, I was planning on doing some of that cleaning together, but if you do it later, then it's just going to be you." She then started lecturing me again about how she doesn't get a rest day and kept muttering under her breath and trying to get me to do it today. So, am I the jerk for refusing? Edit. I think some people got the wrong idea, so I'll try to clear things up. Firstly, when I say stuff is on my bed, I mean the back of my bed, like the headboard. There's a built-in shelf. I don't eat in my room, so there's no food or dishes sitting out. Mold is one of my biggest pet peeves. My room absolutely doesn't smell, and there's nothing on the floor. My mom and I made the arrangement of rest days months ago when I realized my mental health was in decline. I needed something to look forward to. My mom supported this decision. Because of this, I do more schoolwork and chores during the week. The reason I estimated it would take an hour for me to finish is because a lot of the general clutter on my desk doesn't have a place to go. I have a bunch of books up there, and my bookshelf is full. Where do they go? I have some souvenirs from camp and my desk is full. Where do they go? Hopefully you can see the reason this would give me a lot of anxiety. I also had no idea that my room bothered my mom so much. Lastly, I don't completely disregard the rules of the household. If I make something for lunch, I clean it up, regardless of what day it is. If it's Saturday and my mom asks me to take out the trash or do some other small chore that will take less than 5 minutes, I'm in. And for those of you who are curious, the clutter has not spread out of my room. Hopefully, I gave some more context here. You're the jerk. If your dresser and bed are getting so messy it would take an hour to clean them, you need to be cleaning more consistently. Your mother shouldn't have to be hounding you to make that happen. Stop being a slob, and she won't have to micromanage when things get done, and you can rest when you please. She just doesn't understand? Oh honey, she does understand. And I promise, your mom never gets a rest day where she doesn't have to do anything at all. Not even for an hour. You're the jerk. But you're 16, so it's kind of expected. You're the jerk. Clean your room. It's not cute to be messy and gross. All the TikToks about depression rooms have encouraged the idea that it's cool to live in squalor. It isn't, and it often makes the house smell. If you don't want to do it every Saturday, then keep it clean on a daily basis. When you move out, you can then be a slob to your heart's content. Not the jerk. My mom used to try pulling this crap on me too. Eventually, it got so bad that I straight up told her if she didn't lay off, I'd start spreading lies about her boyfriend that would totally ruin their lives. She started crying and asked how I could say such a thing. I told her straight up, you push someone far enough, don't be surprised when they bite back. Well, long story short, my mom got out of hand again about a month later, telling me to clean my cat's litter box, even though I had already changed it out twice that month. I held true to my word, and her loser boyfriend decided their relationship wasn't worth dealing with the backlash of me and my drama after I told everyone in the family some horrible things about him. Yeah, they were all lies, but I'm a good liar. Now my mom is depressed, but at least I can watch my anime in peace now and stay in goblin mode. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her mom? Please let us know. You ever start to wonder if those child-free people are onto something? Am I the jerk for not letting my friend bring his service dog over? I'm male, 39. My friend, male, 38, recently got a service dog. It's a diabetic alert dog. The issue arises in that he wants to bring it to my house when I host hangouts and parties. I'm not much of a dog person and really don't want it in my house. It's a breed that sheds a lot, and I don't want to have to deal with dog hair in my house. Also, my kids regularly play in our yard, and I don't want them to encounter any of the mess that the dog would leave behind. I've spent the last 10 years in this house, turning it into a place my friends, family, and I could hang out. I have a pool, I built a bar in my basement, those types of upgrades. I offered to meet out at a restaurant or someone else's place and to host less, but my house is the preferred destination among everyone else. I have amenities that others don't, and there are no expensive food and bar tabs at my place. I host a lot during football season and other major sporting events, with some general hangouts in between. I told my friend that his dog wasn't welcome. I offered to pay for a monitoring device he can use while at my house, but he didn't take that offer well. He let me know he wasn't happy and recently missed our Super Bowl get-together. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's your home. You can invite whoever you want. You have a no-dog rule. You actually made an effort to accommodate him. He hasn't always had this dog, so what was he doing before? He can ask and you can say no. Obviously, don't be surprised if your friendship changes or goes away completely. You're going to get a lot of "you're the jerk" votes just because it's a legitimate service dog, but people fail to realize you can't force your dog in private homes. That is your space to do as you please. I'm amazed at how many people here think OP is the jerk. What is he supposed to do? Dog hair gets everywhere. Like what? The friend survived without the dog prior. I'm sure he can do it for a few hours. It's honestly not surprising, considering the huge number of extreme dog lovers in this sub. There was a post a few weeks ago where a woman, OP, dog sat her daughter's dogs for free for years. The daughter traveled often for her job. Then OP's other daughter gave birth to OP's first grandchild, and OP wanted to spend more time with her grandchild by babysitting. The issue was that the grandchild's parents didn't want their newborn to be around the two dogs that were described by OP as well-behaved but rambunctious. So OP tells her daughter with the dogs she can't dog sit them anymore, which made the daughter mad. The judgment here was that OP was the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. My mom keeps volunteering me for church stuff. I, 32 female, have dealt with my mom, who's 61, volunteering me and my things for most of my adult life. If someone reaches out to ask for something, she says I can do it, and then texts, "Call me. It's not an emergency, but important." Most of the time, I just give in and do it, but constantly remind her how much I detest being voluntold to do something. If the person needs something that I can help provide, they can reach out to me themselves. Today, I had 2 missed calls and a text. "Call me. Not an emergency, but very important." So I called her back. She told me that the youth pastor was needing another easel for the service that the youth was putting on, and she said that I had one that I could bring. She asked if I would be okay with that. I said no. This immediately ticked her off. "It wouldn't hurt you to bring it." I'm not dragging it all over the place. It would be a big help to me. It would have been a big help to someone else that you could have told to text or call me about it. You don't have the right to volunteer my time and my things to other people. What about all of the things we do for you? For this, she was starting to list off a bill she is helping me pay, and the fact that we went to dinner for my birthday, or lunches that we occasionally get. I helped remodel her house. I fix her computer all the time. I clean her house. I do yard work for her because my dad is unable to. I house sit when they're on vacation, which is a lot. That's just listing a few things that I do for them. You don't get to try and guilt trip me. The answer is no. This youth pastor has access to multiple different routes to get an easel. She does production work with one of the schools as well as the community theater. All that would have a spare easel, used for show postings and such, that she could borrow for the day. I don't want my things damaged or loaned out to people to wait weeks or months to get back. If the youth pastor had texted me or called me, I might have been inclined to oblige and figure out how to get my easel, which is not small or collapsible, to and from the church. However, my mom simply said that I would be happy to take it without asking me beforehand. My sister said that I don't have to readily lend my things if I don't want to. Am I the jerk for putting my foot down? Not the jerk. Your mother won't stop doing this until there are consequences for her actions. She wants to be the hero that helped, which is why she doesn't direct them to ask you. Tell her that the answer will always be no, but that people are welcome to contact you directly and stick to it. But do expect a tantrum from her when you do that. Not the jerk. No is a complete sentence. Keep setting boundaries and being consistent. I know it's hard when it's your own mother, but it's all the more reason to keep it up. Your time and property are not hers to offer. Not the jerk. I think you've trained your mom to believe you'll always say yes whenever she volunteers you or your things for something. It's time to re-educate her. You do not have to lend your things out if she wants you to do so. You do not have to give your time if she volunteers that. This will be difficult, but keep telling her no. Keep telling her to have the pastor, or neighbor, or whoever call you themselves if they need your stuff or your time so badly. You might even have to tell your mom that the answer will automatically be no if she has said that you'd loan something out. The paper I wrote isn't to your standards? Have fun reading a thesis. In my town, there are 2 colleges. One is a private institution for those with a lot of money, and the other is a run-of-the-mill state college with nothing notable about it. I attend the latter due to my not wanting to take out a copious amount in student loans, and the professors that teach there are a gamble in terms of quality. This is where our antagonist, who we'll refer to as Mr. V, comes into play. I had taken a Composition 2 class the semester prior and was on great terms with the man, even having sent a get-well-soon card to his office when he missed a week due to him being very ill. This is all to say that he and I were pretty close, and, with my grades being 95 or more on every assignment, we never had any spats academically either. Come the following semester, where I needed to take what the college referred to as a worldly elective in order to finish my associate's degree. I decided to take Shakespearean literature with this same man as my professor, and for the first few months, everything went swimmingly. Assignments got submitted on time, papers were graded with the same high marks I had been receiving, etc. This is where the issues come into play. This semester, since he and I were close and the class was Shakespearean literature, my papers were comedic in nature, and I didn't see a need to put my usual 110% into them. He never had a problem with this, going as far as to say he looked forward to reading them as my jokes would make him laugh. Then we got the play, The Tempest, which, in his words, was Shakespeare's magnum opus, and everything went downhill. I wrote my paper as usual, submitted it, and within 48 hours I got an email telling me how disgusted he was of my behavior and that the paper was a pathetic excuse research-wise and a joke format-wise. He said he'd give me one more attempt, but not to expect much leniency in the future, to which I responded, "You'll have it back within 72 hours. I was livid, infuriated beyond belief that 7 papers in, he got mad at how I wrote and formatted it for the sole reason that it was about his favorite play. He wants a paper that will wow him. I'll wow him all right. I traded shifts with some of my coworkers, and for the next 72 hours, I wrote an 8-page paper about why The Tempest is Shakespeare's worst works, citing some crucial names in the literary world and providing close to 20 sources claiming this to be true. I had other professors at the college proofread it, as well as family and friends of mine who excel in all things literature, just to be double sure of its quality and submitted it exactly 72 hours later. The paper was given a perfect 100, and I never heard from him outside of class again. According to a friend of mine who took that class the next year, he no longer claims that Tempest is the best work by Shakespeare, and as a whole, seemed defeated about even teaching the class. Am I the jerk for not splitting my trust fund with my half-sister, even though she's pregnant? I, female 23, have a half-sister, Kylie, who's 21, who's the product of one of my dad's affairs. Her birth resulted in my parents splitting up. Mom remarried 2 years later, and my dad moved away shortly after the split and wasn't really part of my life. I always knew about Kylie, but I only met her when I was 16 through my father, and while we saw each other a few times over the next few years, we never developed a relationship. For most of the past 2 decades, my father has been a gambling addict. He's never had much of a stable income and definitely not a stable lifestyle. Because of this, my grandparents fulfilled all the financial stipulations in his divorce. They paid for my education, paid child support to my mother, and set up a trust fund, which I got when I turned 21. This was all an unofficial arrangement, and they did not do this for Kylie. I met my fiance at 19, so I've never used any of the money in the trust fund. 2 weeks ago, I was at my dad's for dinner. We live in the same city, and he said that Kylie had asked for my phone number. I said it was okay to give it to her. My dad also mentioned that Kylie is now pregnant. A few days after this, I got a call from Kylie. She explained that she's working a minimum wage job and living in accommodation that will be unsuitable when she gives birth. She said that since I had a trust fund that she also should have got, I should split it with her so that her kid doesn't have to go through what she did. I was totally blindsided by this and said I would think about it. She called me every day after that, saying how she had a lot of expenses now that she was pregnant and guilt-tripping me, saying the family owes her. I talked to my grandfather, and he said while it's my money, he thinks I'd be an idiot to hand out large sums of money to someone I don't even know and who only wants to know me because she wants money. Ultimately, I felt he was right, and I told Kylie I wouldn't be splitting the money with her. She started screaming at me, calling me selfish and spoiled, and basically dumped 20 years of drama at my door because I had the audacity to be born. She also said it will be my fault if something happens to her baby or if he or she grows up poor. I hung up the phone and cried. My grandparents and fiance say I've done the right thing. My dad said he's offered to give Kylie some money, but he doesn't have access to the kind of money in the trust fund because of his addiction. But he said I'm not to blame and that Kylie isn't my responsibility. The things she said about her life and about her kid's future were so awful, I can't stop thinking about it. I don't think I'm the jerk for not wanting to give huge amounts of money to a virtual stranger, especially one who was so demanding and rude to me. But I also don't like to think I'm punishing her future baby for who their mother is. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, not by a long shot. You don't have a relationship with Kylie. Nothing about her situation is your fault or your responsibility. It's your money and you have no obligation to give it to her, pregnant or not. Not the jerk. Kylie is not your responsibility, but that of her parents. That said, one doesn't make a baby and blame others for that kid's living conditions. She has a responsibility to her baby, not you. And if it wasn't because of money, she wouldn't give two hoots about you. Go and enjoy your trust fund. Am I the jerk for telling my nephew the truth? That no one in the family likes him? This involves me, 25 male, my sister, Diana, who's 31, and her son, Darius, who's 10. I get along with Diana fine, but I won't pretend I like Darius. I think he's an entitled brat who's gotten away with crap far too many times. I don't think Diana has ever reprimanded him, and every time the little jerk acts up, Diana makes excuses for him. He's already been suspended from school for stealing. He's a bully to all of his cousins, and I know for a fact that no one in my family likes him at all. Both of my parents can't stand him. My mother, a woman who could find the love in her heart to babysit a honey badger, refuses to watch Darius at all because of his behavior. My father will take all of the grandkids out to fish every few months, except for Darius, because he's so tempted to throw him into the lake and drive off. His words, not mine. On Monday, I got a call from my sister, who panicked because she got called into work. Darius was out of school and her babysitter was not available. No one else in the family will watch Darius, so I told her to drop him off and I would watch him. It was a nightmare. Darius was mad he had to spend his day off at my place. He refused to do anything I offered, made a mess in my bathroom, harassed my dog, and had a tantrum because I wouldn't let him use my work computer to play games. By lunchtime, I was frustrated beyond all belief. I made him mac and cheese, and he demanded I take him to Wendy's. He refused to eat and eventually dumped his bowl of food on the floor. At that, I just kinda lost it. I didn't yell or get aggressive at all. I just sighed and asked him if he realized that everyone in the family literally despised him. I explained that he was at my house because Grandma and Grandpa can't stand him, and in fact refused to let him come to their house because he acts like a little jerk. I won't lie, I was being honest. He started crying and locked himself in my bathroom until he came out and sat and watched TV until my sister came and got him. I told her what happened, and we got into a massive argument as well. She called me cruel, and I told her that she's to blame and he would have learned eventually. My family is split on this. My dad thinks the little jerk deserved it, while my siblings have mixed opinions. My mother has told me she's staying out of this, but if I feel the need to apologize, do it and move on. What do you people think? He's 10. He's being raised badly. He didn't just wake up one day and decide, you know what, I'm gonna be a total jerk to everyone. This is your sister's failure, and as much as he is a total little jerk, it's not entirely his fault, because he's 10 and he's never been taught better. Did he need a serious talking to? Yes. Was your way the right way to do it? Not really. It's better to talk about behavior and outcomes than make it about the kid. Instead of telling him that his actions caused people in the family to not want to be around him, which I would applaud, you told him that his grandparents loathe him, himself. It's not very effective because it doesn't give him anything to change. Behaviors can be changed, but if you tell a kid that everyone can't stand them, that's them as a whole, not something they can change. It's not like telling a jerk adult that everyone dislikes them because they're a jerk. An adult can figure out what that means and deal with it. But a kid, their family is their whole world and all of the people they rely on, and you told him that basically everyone in his world loathes his very being. That's what makes it cruel. I really don't want to call you a jerk because I'm not sure I would have lasted even till lunchtime with that little jerk. But it wasn't the right way. A regretful, everyone sucks here. You're the jerk 100%. I'm a teacher, so I sympathize with having to deal with behavioral problems like this, but you focus on the behavior as the problem, not the kid. You do not tell a kid that nobody likes them, especially their own family. That's how you give kids social anxiety, not how you fix behavior. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I sent my cousin the bill for my kid's birthday cake after her kid ruined it. We recently threw my 5-year-old a birthday party. He hasn't had a real birthday party since he was 2 years old due to lockdown, so this was the first one he'd actually remember. We wanted to make it special, so we invited all of our closest friends, family members, and their kids. One of my cousins, a single mom, has a very unruly 6-year-old. He's loud, disobedient, and a nightmare in public. When it came time to blow out the candles and cut the birthday cake, he came and stood directly next to my son. I anticipated what was going to happen next and asked my husband to stand behind this kid in case he tried to pull anything. After we sang, this kid kept trying to blow out the candles. My husband kept blocking him and pulling him back, and we could tell the kid was getting frustrated. Eventually, my son blew out the candles, and the kid absolutely lost it. He threw a tantrum and slammed his entire arm into the cake, knocking it into the table. It was so awkward, everyone just gasped and got quiet. My son looked up at us, and I could tell he was about to start crying. In an effort to not cause a bigger scene, my husband picked him up and whispered to him that we had another special cake just for him. We didn't, and he seemed to calm down. Meanwhile, his cousin was still standing there screaming and crying, his arm covered in cake. His mom was nowhere to be seen. I walked him over to the sink and washed him off and quietly told him that he shouldn't have done that to the cake and that he should apologize to his cousin for what he did. He screamed, "No!" in my face and then ran away. My husband ended up running out to buy a sheet cake that we cut and served to everyone. I spoke to my cousin after the party about what happened since she wasn't in the room, and she brushed it off, saying, "Kids will be kids." I completely disagree. I've been to plenty of birthday parties where the other kids let the birthday boy or birthday girl have their moment. I suggested that she pay for the ruined cake, and she looked at me like I was crazy. I told her how important it was to us that this birthday be special to my son, since it would be the first one he remembered, and now all he would remember was that his cousin ruined his special moment. She got extremely defensive and refused to pay for anything. She then accused me of acting like the perfect mom, and began to list the ways in which I was in fact not perfect. It was a hurtful conversation and we haven't spoken since. I sent her the bill for the ruined cake and she has not paid us. I actually feel she should pay for both cakes since her kid is the reason we had to get a new one, but I didn't go that far. My husband thinks she'll never pay us and that I should drop the issue at this point. He says that since she's a single mom, it's probably hard on her and we should cut them both some slack. I understand that, but I feel like that's just letting her and her son off the hook, and this will lead to even bigger problems in the future if we don't hold them accountable. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk, but you'll never get your money, and I think you made the point. The kid is a jerk because the parent is a jerk. No longer invite them to any parties and enjoy your immediate family because they seem nice. Bring down all the servers during the day? Why not? At the height of the subprime mortgage market, around 2007, when all it took to qualify for a home loan was that you were breathing, I reluctantly took a job with a mid-sized lender that had the headquarters in one state and a large office in another, where I was. We had very recently combined 2 local offices and moved into a shiny new building we had all to ourselves. In order to keep the servers up during a power outage, we had a massive battery backup array. They wanted these servers to remain powered for a minimum of 12 hours in case the power went out. We had 32 batteries daisy-chained together with 1 unit serving as the control unit. When we moved this massively heavy battery array from the old building to the new, getting it all reconnected was one of my duties. I got them all stacked and connected and turned on. Before we had connected the servers, I made sure they were all aligned properly and at one point gave one a little bump to move it just a bit and the whole thing shut off. After double-checking everything, I concluded we had a bad controller that could continue to present intermittent problems. The VP of IT, we'll just call him VP, had flown out to oversee the move. The guy was just a kid of 23, and if I recall correctly, he was the son of a friend of the founders. He was a smart guy, just inexperienced, and had an ego that far exceeded his skills and experience. So I told him, "Hey VP, there's a fault in the battery array. If you bump it a little, it goes off." VP replies, "Don't worry about it, Jake. Just get it up and running so we can get the servers connected." So I did. This was not the malicious compliance. 3 months down the road, everything in the new office is humming along and it's time to catch up on lingering tasks. On the phone with VP and he says, "Jake, go reconfigure the controller card for the battery array with the IP address I just emailed you." You guessed it, cue malicious compliance. I knew what was very likely to happen and I purposely did not remind VP of the instability of the controller card. So after the call, I grabbed a serial cable and my laptop and went down to the server room. The moment I plugged that cable into the controller card of the battery array, the entire thing went down like a drunk on an icy sidewalk. Normally, this wouldn't be a huge issue, but this was a mortgage company and it was early afternoon on the last day of the month. Interest rates had been locked and loans had to be closed. I powered the battery array back on, fired up the servers, collected my laptop, and walked out. As I came up the back stairs into the main office area, it was pandemonium. No one quite understood what had happened yet. The VP called me and asked what had happened. I replied, "I only did what you told me to do. I went to reconfigure the controller card for the battery array and then reminded him that I had previously reported it as faulty." I of course got the blame for the whole debacle. Hundreds of loans didn't get closed that day. The predatory lender lost out on a lot of money and I was about to be fired. When I got back to the tech room, I started copying all my files, etc. to a CD because I knew what was going to happen. I also had a talk with the VP of lending and explained what really happened. At the end of the workday, I was brought into the conference room by HR. The VP was on speakerphone. "Jake, this is all your fault, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to let you go." I was stoic in my reply. "No, this is your fault. I warned you before that the controller was bad." He said, "You knew it was the last day of the month. You should have known to wait the next day," and proceeded to start yelling and screaming at me because he had to deflect because HR was right there. I stopped him in the middle of seething and said, VP, you fired me, right?" He shot back, "You're darn right I did." So I stood up, took a calm, deep breath and said, "Then I don't need to sit here and listen to you," and I walked out, leaving my laptop behind. I could hear the speakerphone jumping off the conference room table as he screamed at me to come back. I stopped, laughed, and kept on walking. Best day of work I ever had. Edit. For those that said I should have reminded him, it wouldn't have mattered a bit. He dismissed pretty much everything I ever said to him that wasn't following orders, and if something went wrong, he was never to blame. He was arrogant and inexperienced and never took advice. Also, the company as a whole was highly predatory, something I didn't know when I started. Am I the jerk for storming out after I didn't like the birthday present I was given? I, 20 female, recently turned 20 and had a party to celebrate turning 20. It was a small gathering at my favorite sushi restaurant with only my immediate family and a few friends. Everything was going well until it came time for the presents. You see, in my family, there's this tradition that when the firstborn turns 20, they are given this pocket watch that was owned by my great-grandfather. When our country was still colonized by the British, he, my great-grandfather, was taken in by some missionaries and became a teacher. As a teacher, he was super instrumental to the community and partly funded the first Black-owned school there. He became headmaster, and as a thanks, the community chipped in to get him a pocket watch. When my grandfather turned 20, he was given the watch, and it became a tradition. As per tradition, I was expecting to get the watch. I had even made an effort of hinting how I wanted a watch for the whole year prior. Among the presents, I saw this small box and got excited thinking it was the watch. The watch came in this wooden casing with a velvet lining inside, and it was about the same size as the box I saw. I made a deliberate choice to open that box last to make sure the night ended on a highlight. When it came time to open the box, it was a watch, but a digital one. It was a good watch, to be honest, but it wasn't the watch. My dad was excited as he went on prattling about the features of the watch. It could count steps, connect to my phone via Bluetooth, control music, measure my heart rate, etc. While he was talking, I burst into tears and left the table running. My dad follows and asks why I was sad, and I said I wanted the watch, the one that belonged to my great-grandfather. He said he wanted to give it to my younger brother, who is 12, since he's a boy. If he gives it to me, it will leave the family since I'll get married to a man and join his family. This came as a blow since I've always been closer to my dad than my brother was, and my brother isn't even interested in the watch like I have been my whole life. We got into an argument, and it ended with him saying my immaturity over such a small matter is why he wouldn't have given the watch to me even if I was a boy. I left after he said that. That was 2 weeks ago, and we haven't spoken since. So, am I the jerk? Edit. It's always been the firstborn who gets it, but the firstborns have always been men since the tradition started. I'm the first female firstborn. I suppose I shouldn't have stormed out. I'm 20 now after all. I was super overwhelmed by my feelings. I'm prone to tears, always have been, but I should have calmed myself, especially since it was a public place. Not the jerk. Your father is passing you over for an important family heirloom because you're not a boy. I don't blame you for getting upset. I honestly don't get how people are saying not the jerk. She's not entitled to the watch. You're the jerk big time. Because Reddit is an echo chamber of entitled jerks who have no experience in the real world or in a functioning society. They would call this horrible if the roles were reversed, except they would still say the man is the jerk for trying to take away a female heirloom. It's tragic, but I don't know what you really expect. Karen celebrates our inability to adopt, so I kicked her out of my house. My husband, who's 36, and I, 34 female, have been foster parents for the past 6 years. We usually only had short-term placements, around 4 to 8 months or so. Then 2 years ago, we had Caden placed with us. He was 4 at the time. It was supposed to be another short-term placement, but then things changed and it became clear he was going to be with us for a while. After a year, we were told his plan was likely changing to adoption. We decided we would if that happened. Eventually, we were told we were going to be able to. My brother's wife, Denise, who's 40, was adopted at birth and originally was a great resource for us. We've always done our research to be informed and to best help any kid in our care. Things were fine until we shared we were going to adopt Caden. Denise said that we were stealing him from his family and that we should fight to keep him with his family despite no family stepping up. Well, in the end, a relative did step up and applied for kinship. They received custody of Caden and will likely adopt them. It is truly the best thing for Caden to stay in the family, but it doesn't mean that it isn't extremely hard on everyone involved. We raised him for 2 years. We love him, soothed every nightmare, fever, etc. We built a bond. It was also hard to explain to him why it went from, "We're adopting you," to, "You're going to live with," insert relative that he didn't even know well. Caden was reunited with the family member on January after only 1 week's notice. The family has also decided we shouldn't see Caden.
It's their right, and we understand, but we've been essentially cut off from his life and we'll never see him again. It's hard. My husband and I have gone through a grieving period. We decided to take a break from fostering. We recognize this was the best thing, but it doesn't make it any easier. Most of our family has been pretty understanding and supportive as we work through our grieving. Everyone except Denise. She keeps saying what a wonderful thing this is, and we need to stop being sad, that it's not about us. On Saturday, she and my brother came over. We were having a decent day until I came across a picture of Caden on my phone. I got a little teary-eyed, and I had to leave the room for a moment. I returned and I apologized. Denise got snippy and said,
"You need to cut this out. He wasn't your kid. This is what's best for him. If you truly loved him, you'd be over this by now."
I was still kind of upset and mixed with everything I was going through. I screamed at her that she was an insensitive little jerk and she only looks through things from her perspective. I said I understand she resents her adoptive parents, but that doesn't mean we were wrong for wanting to adopt Caden. She tried arguing with me, but I threw her out of my house. She left in a huff. My brother has since called and said he understands that Denise is candid, but I was wrong to scream at her, and I could have handled it better. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's like she's taking every opportunity to rub in how she was right when you're not saying she wasn't. You're just having understandable, sad emotions about the situation. It's not like you're looking at Caden's picture and going, "We need to go to that charlatan's house and take him back right now." I'm glad you were able to do what was best for Caden, and I'm sorry that it's caused you so much pain. The two are not mutually exclusive, and it seems like you realize that, and Denise missed the memo. Edit. It's also only been around a month or two after you bonded with him for 2 years and you were preparing to adopt him. Denise comes off as really cold, even with her own adoption history factoring in. Don't calculate a table's bills the moment you get their order ticket. It makes it hard to keep track. You got it, boss. Info. This does not take place in the US, Europe, or Australia. This is set in Asia. I won't clarify where since it's not important, just wanted to give you guys context. For starters, I'm 23, a university student working part-time at my aunt's restaurant to make a little extra moolah before the academic year starts. My job is pretty simple. It's an all-rounder job where I need to take people's orders, send tickets to the kitchen, calculate each table's bills, handle payments, and clear tables. I'm only here until the end of the week because I secured another gig elsewhere before the academic year starts, so I figured why not finish this week for a little extra cash before then. I get along with most of the staff, all of whom are a decade or so older than me, and said individuals work at the restaurant full-time. There's another part-timer who's 19 who's working here, and he comes to work whenever he's able since he's studying too. He wasn't around for a couple of weeks, so I've been left to sort out mostly waitressing matters. My shifts during lunch hour get particularly busy, which is why my system keeping the workflow super smooth is a crucial point to this post. The moment after bills have been settled, tables need to be cleared immediately because new customers come pouring in and some insist on being seated even before the tables have been cleared or wiped down. I came up with a system in 3 weeks that I've been here that works for both myself and my colleagues. Upon receiving tickets for orders that have been received, I always key in their order according to the table they're set at, so that it's less time-consuming in the event other customers want to settle their respective bills. Customers are expected to come to the payment counter when they're ready to pay, so this system is a lot easier and much more efficient than letting tickets pile up and only calculating the bill right when customers are about to pay, which results in a longer line. I always make it a point to ask customers if their food has all arrived, if they were satisfied with the quality of their order, and if they ordered anything else that I hadn't seen on their tickets. Once they verify that their orders are correct, that's all. I go about my day and mind my business. That was until the other part-timer approached me earlier today. His point was an eyebrow raiser for sure. I'm not the type of person to pick fights or argue, so since he was so insistent that my way of doing things was making it difficult for him to keep track of additional orders at each table, I decided to just let him have at it since he was so happy to tell me how to do my job. I simply smiled and nodded at him, making a beeline to the cleaning supplies and thinking to myself, "You want me to stop punching in people's orders? Sure thing." For a solid hour or two, I only collected the tickets, bringing them to the cash register and letting them pile up, just as he requested. When I noticed customers stand up from their seats and making their way to the payment counter, I would speed walk to the cleaning supplies and start collecting plates to show that my hands were occupied and that I wouldn't be able to sort out people's bills. I left it all to my dear coworker, who tried telling me what to do and how to do it. It was the right call to make because the line that followed due to his insistence on changing the system, snaked about halfway through the restaurant, full of customers waiting their turn to pay their bill. Once lunch hour had died down, I smiled to myself and went back to keying in people's tickets the way I always had. My part-time coworker sheepishly approached me with new additions to existing orders since then. The Wholesome Tale of Catherine, an unusual guest that I judged way too soon. Hello, it's me again, a B&B owner that mostly has wholesome stories to share, and I thought I'd post another today to hopefully make you smile. This last week we had a guest, let's call her Catherine, who turned out to be one of those people we're not likely to forget anytime soon. Catherine is in her 60s and upper middle class judging by her clothes, sports car, and extensive plastic surgery, which tends to give her unlined face a look of perpetual slight surprise. She had booked a studio with a kitchenette and breakfast because she wanted to experience the snow, and our mountains are the best bet in a 5-hour driving radius. No idea what brought her to our humble B&B rather than to one of the 4- and 5-star resorts in the area, but she turned out to be genuinely lovable. But let's start from the beginning, her arrival. Unfortunately, climate change is real, and these last few winters have been serving a lot more raining days, storms, and gray skies than the snow-covered, blue-skied winter wonderlands she was probably hoping for. Catherine arrived on a particularly rainy day and came in rather drenched after the 30-second walk from her expensive sports car. At first glance, I couldn't suppress a bit of a smile. Her business shoes, skirt, blouse, and fur-trimmed overcoat were pretty far removed from the oftentimes mud-drenched hikers, dog owners, and young families from the cities we usually get here. Misjudging her arched eyebrows, I took her to be surprised, perhaps negatively, and half prepared myself for a walkout. Whoops, I was quite wrong there. Turns out this was her happy look. She complimented our common area, which doubles as a breakfast room and has a self-serve bar, reception, and fireplace. Granted, the latter is intentionally extra cozy on dreary days. Having been shown her room, she was quite content. Now, normally, we don't offer daily housekeeping, but I decided to ask her if she'd prefer that. No, I'm fine. I actually prefer it if I can just keep my own mess lying around for a few days. She told us she'd just let us know if she needed anything. A woman after my own heart. The next few days, Catherine was decidedly different from our usual guests. At times, a bit eccentric, but always polite and genuinely fun to be around. She forgot her toothbrush and paid us well to get her a new Sonic one on our shopping run. Do you own a Sonic toothbrush? I just need that feeling of clean teeth, you know? Catherine's breakfast consisted of 2 eggs, fruit, mozzarella, and cheese, but no bread. Flat white with oat milk. Oh, and a cigarette on the patio after. In the evenings, after having had dinner somewhere, she'd often buy a bottle of wine from our bar, never without offering us a glass, too. When she expressed her disappointment with the weather, it remained stormy and rainy throughout her stay. We quickly came up with alternative activities. National Park and Natural History Museum, a tour through a historic mine, and a spa day. We even booked her a driver from the village so she could sample the local liquors and spirits. Catherine being Catherine, she befriended a young hiker couple, let's call them Lynn and Tina, from another room one evening over a bottle of wine or two. The next day, they all went shopping for outdoor clothing in Tina's beat-up little old car, since Catherine's 2-seater couldn't fit them all. Catherine left in white trainers and her fur-trimmed coat, only to return with new top-of-the-line hiking boots, trousers, and an insulated winter and rain coat that cost decidedly more than a week's stay with us. She even bought Lynn and Tina a pair of gloves each, the smallest item they could come up with when she offered to buy them something, as they later told me. To her credit, the very next day she put those hiking boots to good use and joined Lynn and Tina for a hike that would take 5 hours on a good day. They came back after 7, wet, muddy, and happy, especially after we brought out the hot chocolate. Later, Catherine discreetly asked me for a Band-Aid and disinfectant. Apparently, she hadn't been aware that hiking boots should ideally be broken in with series of shorter hikes. Her blisters had gotten so bad that they had burst. The next day, feeling sorry for her, I bought her my favorite blister pads. That afternoon, she actually bought me a bottle of wine, she knew my favorite by then, to say thanks. Catherine checked out this morning after having kissed me and my partner on both cheeks 3 times, thanking us profusely for a great hidden gem that you have created here, leaving a very generous tip and promising to come back. Not going to lie, I was genuinely touched, but didn't think anything would come from it. What can I say? She wasn't lying. Just now, I received a phone call from Catherine's personal assistant. They've booked the entire B&B, 24 people, including some bunk beds, I triple-checked and was assured that's fine for a family get-together. They'll stay a full week in October and have asked me to work out a bespoke itinerary that's quite eclectic, including an informal vegetarian pizza night in our garden as well as a high-end Michelin star restaurant visit in the next town over. I already called them. They're happy to open specifically for Catherine's group on a specific date. Additionally, the assistant asked me for Lynn and Tina's contact details since Catherine wants to hire them as dedicated hiking guides and photographers for a day or two. They have a semi-successful hiking-themed Instagram. I called Lynn. He had a good laugh and will talk to Tina, since he had absolutely loved to make it work. Shorter hikes this time, he promised. Guys, all the feels. With the risk of being cheesy, it's days like this that I genuinely love my job. It'll never make me rich, unless Catherine would like to buy the property, but the services we offer make people from all walks of life genuinely happy, and to me, that's even better. Am I the jerk for not listening to my sister-in-law's request for a child-free party? I'm extremely close to my cousin, and he's the closest to a sibling in my life, myself not having any siblings. So naturally, when he got married, I was super excited to welcome a sister into my life. My sister-in-law is, however, not as excited as I was, and I get that. So the first time I got a cold vibe from her, I stepped back and apologized to her for overwhelming her. This happened a year back, and after this incident, we hardly met up a few times, and each time we were civil. Sister-in-law is, at best, aloof from our family, and my cousins think that it's because she comes from a completely different background, and her family was not as large as ours. I'm not sure if it's necessary to mention this, but we are a South Asian family, myself and cousin belonging to the second generation, and sister-in-law is white. We later came to know that sister-in-law does not like kids. Our family has a lot of them, my kids as well as kids of other cousins, which is why she gets overwhelmed. So she started coming to our get-togethers less often, and we get that. She was always invited, but she would politely decline every time. Coming to the main topic, my cousin will have to relocate to a different continent for a year and wanted to visit me once before leaving. He offered to come over to our place with sister-in-law. I told him that they were always welcome, but sister-in-law informed me that she wants to visit just us and she doesn't want to be with the kids. I have two who are 5 and 2. She just wants us adults. I offered that we could go out for dinner. She refused and told me that she wanted to drink and let loose. I told her that if she wants to come over to our place, then she is always welcome, but the kids will be here. I told them that the kids go to sleep by 7:30 and we can catch up after that. She refused to that as well. She wants us to keep the kids at a friend's house. We have many in the neighborhood. I told her that, 1, I'm not comfortable with keeping my kids away for the night, and 2, this is our house, meaning the kids' house as well, and that she's the guest. So we get to decide if the kids stay or go. Now sister-in-law thinks I'm a huge jerk for refusing just one night of fun. Am I the jerk here? Should I have just listened to her? Edit. Cousin and sister-in-law are married. It was a court marriage. Both of them did not want a big one. 2. So I did not mention that my cousin was not there during the conversation. After this short fiasco, I did not get the time to speak to him, but I did tell my parents as I was upset. Not sure what happened there, but hopefully I will know soon. 3. Someone mentioned that I might not like sister-in-law. I will not say that I dislike her because, frankly, she's not done anything till then to be disliked. She was quiet, but she was civil. And after a couple of gatherings, she stopped visiting completely, so I would say I'm indifferent towards her. 4. My cousin always had made it clear that he does not want kids, so they were definitely on the same page in this case. Nobody has mentioned this, but I still wanted to let you know that I am totally pro child-free events. Or I am and will always stand by someone who decides not to have kids. These are completely personal decisions and I respect them. I've seen marriages fall apart because of one incorrect decision of having kids when the couples were not ready. I know how serious a decision this is. I fully support people who do not want to have kids, and I also think it's completely fine to dislike them altogether. A personal choice that I fully respect. Not the jerk. Them being in their beds and asleep is an issue? What kind of nonsense is this? Maybe she really doesn't want to see you guys before the trip and this is an excuse. She can say to her husband now, "See, they won't even accommodate one simple request." I'd communicate with cousin on these issues, not her, or in a group chat that he's on so you can know that he sees the text. Would I be the jerk for wanting to move out in less than a month after my roommate tried to increase the rent? I, 26 female, live with my best friend, 27 male, of 10 years. He will be referred to as W from this point on to make it a bit clearer. We've been living together for almost 2 years and it's been great. We get along and only have had a few arguments, which I feel is normal, but nothing outrageous until a few days ago. A couple months ago, W asked me how I felt about having a third roommate. I gave him a clear answer of no. I'm not comfortable with that for a couple of reasons, as we only have one bathroom and this other roommate would be male. I'm currently in the tiniest bedroom and said third roommate would get the biggest. W understood my point and even offered me the biggest room. Now fast forward to a couple days ago. W brings up third roommate again, but this time it's not a discussion. He says, "I talked to third roommate and he seems serious, so I don't know when I'll have him move in." I ask right away, "So this isn't an if, it's a when now?" W says yes. I was already thinking about how could he do that without discussing it with me first. We both pay bills directly down the middle, and I had just as much right to have a valid input on these things, but he just made that decision alone. Fine. Financial troubles suck, and if this would ease some, then I can deal with being a bit uncomfortable. There was also the bonus of having rent and bills split 3 ways, so that's a plus. The following day, I mentioned to W about moving my stuff upstairs. W begins to explain that whoever moves upstairs is getting charged $100 extra because the space is bigger. The rent is $730. Split, that's $365. So I say, that means I would have to pay basically what I'm paying now? W responds with, "No, you would have to pay $465. I ask W how much I would have to pay if I just stayed in my current room, and W says I would still have to pay $365. I go to say that's unfair and that they already said I can move upstairs. W responds with, "I can't change my mind?" W starts to yell at me, saying they do everything from washing the dishes, shoveling snow, and taking out the trash, and that I just sit on my butt all day. He says that life isn't fair, or that, "That's life, get over it," and that the world doesn't revolve around me. A little context, we both believe that if you make the mess, you clean it up. I absolutely never wash the dishes because I do not cook or use the dishes. If I'm not ordering takeout, I buy paper plates, forks, bowls, spoons, etc. because of this exact reason. If I use a dish, I wash it right away, always. When W cooks, he uses every single dish he can, as well as getting the kitchen as dirty as humanly possible. W told me not to shovel the snow because of my known back problems. I absolutely do slack on the trash, and I admitted that and apologized for that. I decided to move out in 15 days or less. I don't plan on telling him, but I'm not gonna hide it either. Would I be the jerk? So he's moving in a third person to decrease his cost, but not yours? Not the jerk. And I'd be sure that your mail is immediately forwarded to a P.O. box until you know your future address. No, if you can leave, do it. W is over here making big household decisions and expecting you to just suck it up and go along. If you aren't happy, you can leave, and roommate number 3 can become roommate number 2. If he says anything about it, you can say you changed your mind. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. OP, the first thing you need to do is notify your landlord, your stepfather in this case, that a third person might be moving in and you aren't happy about the situation and might move out. Any tenant that wants to move another housemate in needs to notify their landlord first. Am I the jerk for telling my husband I want his sisters to move out? Please let me know if I'm in the wrong, because my husband just made me feel like I was being too emotional about the situation. My husband and I built a house a few years ago with extra bedrooms, thinking it would be great to host family. Now, a few years later, 2 of his siblings live with us. For context purposes, the older one pays us rent, but the younger one only contributes very little, utility contribution, because they're in school and we wanted to help them save money. On to the issue. I find myself carrying the burden of managing the household for everyone. I'm also a mom and I work full-time, so the load is already heavy. The older sibling has not contributed to any form of cleaning of the home or doing any chores since they moved in. I can count on one hand how many times they've made dinner for the household. Cleaning the bathroom? Nope. Dishes? Nope. Eating our food? Of course. There's more, but I guess it didn't bother me as much until the second sibling moved in and acts identical to the first sibling, meaning double the work. Today I spent hours cleaning out the pantry and fridge, throwing away expired junk and brand new bags of Costco-sized food. I just couldn't believe the amount of work I did today just in the kitchen, while also taking care of my sick kid and all the things that come with that. I was exhausted, to be frank, but not just from today. It seems like everything just piles up. I really want them gone. It's been too many months of living like this and too many talks and reminders to each of them separately with no changes. When my husband got home tonight, I just unloaded on him. My emotions were high. I was very upset and hurt, crying, etc. And he basically told me to stop acting like this. This shouldn't consume my thoughts, and we don't have to address it now. And he didn't understand why I was so upset. I just wanted to vent about the mental load of managing so many tasks for so many people, and he didn't want to hear anything about me being overwhelmed. It's really hurtful to me to not be able to express myself without being shut down immediately. He didn't want to talk about resolution or what we should do. Literally anything I brought up was responded to with, "You keep going on about this." I don't even know how to respond to that. I mean, yeah, I'm uncomfortable in my own home and I'm exhausted and crap needs to change. But it doesn't have to change tonight. Am I really blowing this out of proportion? Am I the jerk? Please help me. Not the jerk, but your main issue here is your marriage. How come you're doing all of this and your husband isn't? You should kick the 3 siblings out or take your kid and go on a long vacation. Not the jerk. Move out for a week or a month and let them deal with the household without you. They won't learn if you keep cleaning up after them.
Karen threatens me with child support. I laugh in her face. The title makes me sound like the biggest jerk in the world, but hear me out. I, 35, male, have 4 kids. My youngest is 6 and my oldest is 14, all to my ex-wife, Clara. I have 2 girls and 2 twin boys, who are 10. I love my kids more than life. I work full-time, so my kids live with my ex, although sometimes they will come to my house after school and I will drop them off the next morning on my way to work. My kids come to my house almost every weekend, except for when they stay at grandparents' or friends' houses. My ex doesn't have a very good job. She's a cashier, and her boyfriend works at KFC. I know money is tight for them, so I often send the kids home with snacks for school. I buy them most of their clothes and a lot of extra things that they want, like jewelry, phones, PlayStations, etc. Well, the other day, Clara called me asking if we could meet up for lunch. As soon as I got there, she got straight to the point, saying she expected $500 in child support every week or she's taking me to court. I laughed at her and she called me an arrogant deadbeat and walked out. Although I do have a good paying job and I could pay her, it's the principle of it. If she had just told me that the money was tight, I would have said of course and chipped in. But seeing as she demanded it, I don't want to. My eldest daughter is asking me to because she doesn't want her mom to make sure I don't see my kids anymore. But to be honest, I don't think she stands a chance in court. My parents and sister told me I am a huge jerk for not only freaking out my daughter, but not paying Clara when she needs it the most. So, am I the jerk? Update. These comments are making some good points, but I'm awfully confused now. I've never thought about why there was never a plan in place. I just signed the papers and it never really got brought up again. When we first divorced, I asked her what custody was going to look like, and she just said, "Don't worry about it." Before she got her job, I was paying around $100 every second week, but when she got the job, she told me that the money made her feel like she was dependent on me. But there was never actually an order in place. I just never thought about it. Is there someone I should go to look at things and see what I should do? I think you should go to a court so a judge can decide a fair amount of child support for the kids. It's about their well-being, not yours or their mother's. Go to court to figure out how much to give your kids the best life possible. Am I the jerk for refusing to answer to a nickname I don't like? I, 28 female, was named after a really obscure character from Greek mythology. My preferred nickname is taken from the end of my name. I always introduce myself with, "I'm my name, but you can call me nickname." None of my coworkers in the small business we work for have ever had a problem with this before, until Megan, who's 25, the niece of Jeff, who's in his 50s, one of the 2 owners, was hired. Jeff and Dave, both in their 50s, co-own the business, but Dave does the actual day-to-day running of the business. I introduced myself and my nickname as usual, but she immediately said that Bessie, not the actual name, would be a better nickname because it comes from the beginning of my name and that she liked it better. I told her I really didn't like that nickname and wouldn't answer to it and asked her to please not call me Bessie, but she insisted that it was so much prettier and that I just needed to get used to it. For the next 2 months, she tried to call me Bessie, but I completely ignored her whenever she addressed me that way.
even when I knew she really needed my help with something. She would call my desk phone and say, "Hey, Bessie." I would reply, "You have the wrong number. There's no Bessie here," and hang up. She then tried to get some of the employees outside the office to start calling me Bessie, but I quickly shut that down. I usually finish my work early and help them with a lot of tedious little things that aren't part of my job description and threatened to stop helping them unless she used my preferred nickname. Friday, she decided she was going to get me to respond to Bessie no matter what. We have an open office design, but are at opposite ends. She started calling out Bessie in a sing-along voice over and over again to try and annoy me enough to respond. Other coworkers got annoyed, most telling her to stop, and one, Lisa, who's 43, telling me to just let her call me Bessie already. I refused, and she kept calling out Bessie louder and louder until Dave barged in. He had been on a conference call with an important client and could hear yelling from his office down the hall. He told her to be quiet, and that if she called me Bessie one more time, he'd write her up and dock her pay. Later, Megan cornered me in the break room, called me a jerk for getting her in trouble, and called me Bessie again for good measure, just as Dave was walking in to heat up his lunch. He gave her a stern look and said, "I warned you." Then he walked to HR to have her written up. Lisa is saying I'm the jerk for never helping Megan, and that if I had been nicer or hadn't fought her so hard on the nickname, she probably would have given up on it a while ago. But because I made such a big deal out of it, it became a challenge. So Reddit, am I the jerk? You're not the jerk. You established a boundary, and her determination to break it is going to keep getting her into trouble. My entitled neighbors stole my garage twice. I live in the northeast of England, and I'm originally from Wales. I've owned a house in Wales I've been renting out for the last 10 years. Everything has been super smooth until a year ago. The tenant stopped paying rent, made multiple promises to pay, etc. In the end, I got so frustrated, I decided to sell the place. I cut my losses on the outstanding rent, circa £3,000, and told the tenant if he left by certain date, I'd write off the rent. Tenant goes over the deadline by a couple of weeks, but ultimately leaves. However, the house is in a terrible condition. The tenant had painted many of the walls bright orange and had got this paint everywhere, including the carpet and skirting boards. The oven had half-cooked rotten food. He had been too lazy to put rubbish in the outside bin, so simply threw it in the shed. Anyway, a bit of a side story, but for context, I live 6 hours away, but my mom and stepfather live 30 minutes away. I've decided to sell, but of course I can't sell the house in its current state. My mom has generously offered to help, and we set a date for me to come back down to start the work. We order a skip, etc. 2 solid days' work later, the place is looking much better. It's not going to win House of the Year, but enough to sell. One of the issues is that we can't seem to get the garage key to work. My stepfather promises to come the following week and drill the lockout. Fast forward to the following week, and my stepfather is in the process of drilling the lockout when he's interrupted by a neighbor who we will call Entitled Neighbor. Entitled Neighbor. "Excuse me, can you please stop doing that? You're damaging my garage." Stepfather. Actually, this garage belongs to my stepson who's selling this house." Entitled Neighbor. "Well, I've been using this garage for the last 12 months, so he has no right." Stepfather doesn't know what to say. Turns out that the entitled neighbor noticed the tenant wasn't using the garage, so drilled out the locks, swapped a new lock, and started using it. When it was finally opened, it was full to the brim with his stuff. He didn't think anyone would notice. I find out the information and call him, telling him he has 24 hours to empty the garage and replace the lock. He can't do it within 24 hours apparently, but apologizes and promises to drop the new keys through the letterbox in a few days. It's annoying, but luckily it's all working out, and I don't want to cause too much hassle with the neighbor. My mom visited the house the following week, picked up the key, opened the garage, and yes, it was now empty. Job done. Fast forward 6 months, house is sold, arranging key handover, etc. However, I get a text from the new owner the following day. Under the sale contract, it's my responsibility to ensure the house and any buildings are empty for the sale. Otherwise, I can be liable for costs, etc. Straight away, I know what's happened and call the entitled neighbor. Turns out he kept a spare key on the lock change. Yes, in hindsight, I should have had my own lock, but I didn't think anyone would be that stupid.
He noticed no one was using the garage, so he decided to start using it again. I was furious. He couldn't understand why I was so mad. But you weren't using it, so what's the big issue? Well, did you ask my permission? No. Does the garage belong to you? No. What do you expect? I gave him 1 hour to clear the garage before I call the police and order a clearance company to empty the garage. The sheer cheek of the man. Anyway, all sorted now, garage is empty, locks have been changed, and having sold the property, the entitled neighbor is now someone else's problem. My Karen roommate keeps throwing away my perfectly good food. My roommate, Tammy, and I are both on fairly limited budgets. I get a little help from my parents, so I have a little bit of a buffer in my income. I tend to make my meals for myself, where I will have leftovers so that I can skip making myself a lunch or a dinner later in the week. Tammy, on the other hand, makes each meal as precisely as she can, so she doesn't waste any money. Just two different ways of looking at meals, I guess. Just after Christmas last year, Tammy was very low on money and asked if she could please have some of my leftovers. I agreed. Instead of serving herself a small portion to see if she would even like my food, she just took a full portion. She ate about a quarter of what she took, and then she threw the rest in the trash. I didn't say anything at the time. Almost the exact same thing happened 2 weeks ago. This time, I asked her to please just try a little before she took a full portion. She said she was really hungry. Almost an entire meal in the trash again. 2 nights ago, she asked for my spaghetti. I said no. It isn't really going to affect me for her to throw away a meal, but it means she's wasting not just my money I spent on the food, but also my time I spent getting the ingredients and preparing it. She isn't talking to me now, but she is complaining to other people about me being cheap and letting her starve. I'm not. I actually gave her a box of generic mac and cheese for her to eat. I'm just not going to watch my hard work literally go in the garbage. She thinks I'm being a jerk because I won't share my food. I would share if she wasn't wasting it. Not the jerk. You tried to be kind and help her out when she was in need. Then she threw your help in the trash. She's the jerk. Plus, wow, you even gave her food she could make for herself. OP. It was just a 50-cent box of mac and cheese. I've had grown men thank me profusely over a 12-cent bag of ramen. It's the fact they don't have stomach pains until they can get to real food. Anyone that's had to suffer knows what I'm talking about. Not the jerk, she's wasting food and you're not her mother. You know you're not the jerk and Tammy knows you're not the jerk, but she's trying to manipulate you. By trying your food and then rejecting it, she's suggesting that you should offer her something else. What she wants is for you to start making what she prefers for the win. You buy it, prepare it, and she gets the food she likes, plus you paying for it. Make the food she doesn't like and eat your own leftovers. She's not gonna starve. Am I the jerk for telling someone they're selfish for asking a 22-year-old to adopt their kid? I'm 22, female. My boyfriend, Malcolm, who's 22, has a half-sister, Elena, who's 12. They have the same dad, and dad's not involved in their lives. Their moms became close friends, and they were raised seeing one another. Malcolm's mom moved abroad a couple of years ago. Elena's mom, Sandra, was diagnosed with cancer last year. She went through treatment, but it's still been determined that there's nothing they can do but make her comfortable. Sandra will pass sometime later this year. She has no family. Malcolm has spent a lot of time helping care for Elena, driving her to school, making her meals, etc. Recently, Malcolm set me down. He said that Sandra asked to speak to him. She said she understood if the answer was no, but asked for him to take on custody of Elena sooner rather than later. That way she could adjust to him being her guardian before she passes. Malcolm would move in with them. Sandra had a sizable life insurance policy and an account to help him care for Elena. To my surprise, he agreed to all of this without even consulting me. I pointed this out, and he said, "We've only been together for 6 months." I asked, didn't he feel too young for all of this? He sort of said he did, but he'd do it for Elena. Without further discussion, he subleased his apartment and moved in with Sandra and Elena. Saturday, I stopped by to pick up Malcolm for lunch. He hadn't returned from work yet, so I was waiting with Sandra. We were making small talk. She mentioned how grateful she was for Malcolm and that he was a sweet boy. I asked if he was really her only option. I mentioned his mom. Sandra said Elena is losing enough. She doesn't want to force her to move abroad on top of everything. She also doesn't feel right asking Malcolm's mom to move back. I said I found the whole thing a little selfish. Malcolm is only 22. He shouldn't be tied down raising a kid.
Sandra got defensive and said she wished she didn't have to ask him. Plus, he said yes. I asked, what else was he supposed to say? Sandra told me I was upsetting her and asked me to leave. Malcolm called me later, screaming at me. He said that I really upset Sandra. I said I was trying to defend him and point out options she may not have thought of. Malcolm told me to butt out and to get on board with this or walk away. He hasn't spoken to me since. I saw Alina at the mall on Sunday and she just ignored me. My mom told me I messed up big time. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. I swear, if I see one not the jerk on this thread, I'll lose my faith in humanity. You should listen to your mother. Sounds like she's a smart woman. Malcolm got lucky. He just got a glimpse into your soul when you let your mask slip. It's twisted under there and cruel. Lucky for him, he saw that early on and hasn't spent years of his life with you. I'm genuinely confused why he hasn't made a clean break yet. Maybe he has and just can't be bothered to inform you. Wow, you're the jerk and soon to be single. You've only been dating this guy for 6 months. You had absolutely no right. Not the jerk. Honestly, don't waste your time with this loser. Any 22-year-old who agrees to basically adopt a kid is honestly just a lost cause. Sure, it's only been 6 months, but if he gave a single hoot about you, he would have talked to you about this beforehand. He's showing you that how you feel and what you think is completely unimportant to him. And if you stay with him, he's going to pick his bratty sister over you every time. Let this sucker go and find a real man who will respect you like the queen you are. Let your ex find some idiot who's willing to play mommy to a tween who's only going to cause nothing but trouble for the next 10 years at least. Then he'll be trying to spend every dime you have to put her through college. Everyone on here calling you the jerk are all just 100% virtue signaling. None of them would stay with a 22-year-old dude who adopts a 12-year-old. And if they did stay with him, it's because they're desperate and have no other options, which would be literally sad. But hey, that's most Redditors for you. I'm one of the rare people on here who's actually had my fair share of attractive boyfriends, and I don't watch anime or read manga. I actually go out and have fun with my friends, something most people on Reddit don't have. Oh man, you're mean. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. I don't think anyone can compete with that last commenter on the jerk scale. Yeah, especially that last part about Redditors not having any friends. Ain't that right, Karen? Stop it, Reddit boy! Just stop it! Leave me alone! I was just agreeing with you. Sister-in-law demands I build a wheelchair ramp to my house for her son, who doesn't even live here. My wife and I recently bought a new house. After we closed on the house, my sister came to see it and asked when we would like her husband to install a ramp. The ramp is for her son, who's in a wheelchair. He and my other nieces and nephew used to come over to our old house all the time to hang out with our kids. My sister's husband, who works in construction, previously installed a ramp in our old house as well as my brother's house because he and my sister want their son to feel welcome in everyone's home. Our previous house was very standard and installing a ramp was easy. This new house, however, sits up high, which means it needs a very long ramp. After measuring according to specifications, we've realized we cannot install a ramp unless we get rid of some of our home's features. The front yard is a tiered garden. It's my wife's favorite feature as she's an avid gardener. We probably would not have bought this house if not for the garden, as we had our eye on another. If we built a ramp leading to the front door, it would cover the majority of the tiered garden. The only other option is the side door. We don't have a back door. The side door, however, leads directly onto the driveway that goes up alongside the house to the garage in the back. If we built a ramp in this area, it would make the driveway too narrow for many of our vehicles. We also have very limited parking on our street, so we would basically lose half of our driveway parking. I also wouldn't be able to get my old muscle car in the garage where I had planned on storing it. I've explained this to my sister, and she's unhappy about our reasonings, especially the one for our front door. She says that she gets the parking problem, but the garden is just a cosmetic thing and not worth making her son feel unwelcomed or like a second thought. Other family is also unhappy because now our house is unusable for family parties since nephew won't be able to come. We do family parties on a rotating system between me and my brother since we're the only ones with big enough homes. I said we could do the family parties out in the backyard in the summer. It's big and it has a lot of trees and a large canopy area where we can put some nice outside furniture and barbecue. Barbecue. The garage also has a bathroom that is accessible, so it shouldn't be a problem for nephew to come, so long as everyone hangs out outside. They think it's unreasonable because it will be too hot to stay outside the whole time and people will need air conditioning. If they go inside to cool down, nephew will feel left out. My brother also doesn't like that the burden is now on him to always host, especially since he will always have to host for Thanksgiving and Christmas, which are the most hectic holidays. Not the jerk. And there's plenty of room for compromise. When it's your turn to host, rent an accessible venue. Doesn't have to break the bank. It can be as simple as an Airbnb. Not the jerk. It's your home, not theirs. Yeah, his situation sucks, but why should you have to get rid of the garden you specifically chose this house for, or block your parking? They didn't pay for the house, and they don't live there. If they really want to visit, they can figure something out. If your brother-in-law works in construction, maybe he can build a temporary ramp that can be assembled and disassembled remotely quickly for get-togethers. Maybe it could be designed for the side door so the garden doesn't get trampled. Don't give up on a solution for both families. Not the jerk. The audacity. Should they have been involved in your house hunt then and chipped in? Unfair that this is always on you and your brother to host. Let's do it at their place since it must be accessible. Or just get together and rent a place for must-do holidays. Am I the jerk for not getting more involved in my daughter's college fund situation? I have 2 kids, a daughter, Sam, who's 17, and a son, who's 19, and I always have made sure that their education is a top priority. My son is already off at school and doing very well, and Sam was accepted into her desired college school and program. My mom promised to pay for her entire education a long time ago, including tuition and accommodation. Everyone was overjoyed with this. However, after my divorce several years ago, Sam started to prioritize my ex-wife's family during every season. Sam decided to visit her mom's side of the family instead of spending time with mine. We always were told there's a lot more people there and the food is so much better. Can't argue with the fact that her extended family was there, but I don't think an hour with grandparents is asking too much. This all upset my mother and strained their relationship. 2 weeks ago, she called me to tell me that she would no longer be paying for Sam's education. She felt that Sam had put her own family second and didn't treat her like she mattered at all. I hate to say it, but I also can't argue with that. Since then, Sam has taken full view of what college is going to look like for her. She will likely need to rethink her dream school and major. On top of that, the loans will be an anchor in her life. She asked me to help, and I certainly will when I can. But when her mother and I divorced, she got all of the college accounts and used that to fund her house. This is old news, but I feel it's very relevant. While I feel bad for my daughter, I do not feel responsible for my mother's actions. She made the choice to stop supporting Sam's education, and I can't force her to change her mind. I've spoken to my mother and tried to reason with her, but she's firm in her decision. I've also told Sam that she brought this on herself for treating her grandmother less than the rest of her family. Sam is understandably upset and feels like she's being punished for wanting to spend time with her mom's side of the family. However, I believe that she's old enough to understand the consequences of her actions and make decisions for herself. As a parent, I've always taught my kids to take responsibility for their choices, and I feel that this situation is no different. So Reddit, am I the jerk here? Should I have gotten more involved? Edit. I think I'm done here. I'll be taking all you have had to say into account. I will speak to my mother and daughter once again, together as one unit. I will make sure Sam knows how her actions have consequences, and my mother as well, but perhaps neither of them are wrong. I want to point out how mean some of you are. I've lived in the States for many years now. It's not common for kids or parents to go no contact with each other. Many of you keep saying, "Don't be surprised when your kid no longer speaks to you." Is this really common in your lives? Because to me, that's unheard of. I talk to my kids often. You really need to get in touch with the outside world. This online place is good for a lot, but please remember that it is a controlled environment. It's not real. Others keep calling Sam a kid. I assume this is a cultural difference. To me, Sam is not a kid, and she hasn't been for a while. She's not an adult, but she's not a kid either. We expect people to be aware of their actions. We let 16-year-olds drive cars, which is very dangerous. 18-year-olds can join the military. And we leave 12-year-olds in charge of our toddlers for money. You need to really think of what age is to you. I guess that could be my culture though. I had to work when I was a kid to bring money in for food. Based on your post and various comments, I'm going to say not the jerk. There was a college fund in place for her that your ex-wife misused through no fault of your own, as giving it over to her was court-ordered. Your daughter was given warning that her grandmother was upset and was going to stop considering her family after repeatedly choosing your ex's family over yours, and even going so far as to let your ailing mother show up to pick her up for an agreed-upon outing, to her not being home and not going. Your son has continued to spend time with grandma and doesn't imply that your family is too boring to visit like your daughter has, so he has earned the privilege of your mother's gift. He put in the work to maintain the relationship and is being rewarded for it. She didn't. Your daughter is learning a very expensive lesson early in life that you can't take people for granted and still feel entitled to support from them. Even if she starts visiting grandma daily from now until graduation, your mother will know that she's only using her for the money now, so it won't mean as much. Your daughter has burned a bridge because she wasn't willing to sacrifice a few hours here and there to stay close with one of the few family members who is actually willing to pay a life-changing amount of money towards her future. It sounds like you tried to warn her multiple times while still giving her space to make decisions for herself, as she's been inching closer to adulthood, and she decided to ignore you and is now paying the price. She wanted to be treated like an adult to make her own decisions on who she visited, but now doesn't want to deal with the adult responsibilities for those choices. At this point, she needs to be asking her mother about the college fund she got in the divorce and how she plans to make up for it being gone now. Honestly, your mom sounds super toxic, getting so offended over the fact that a kid is spending more time at her other family's house that she's going against her promise to punish the kid. While there may not be much you can do about it, your mother being financially manipulative could be one reason your daughter is pulled away. Don't be expecting to have a great relationship with Sam going forward or for her to ever forgive her grandmother. It sounds like it's not spending more time. She spends every holiday with the other side of the family and even ghosted grandma on a planned outing. That's extremely rude. OMG, you ghosted me. Guess I'll just renege in my promise and possibly ruin your future. The idea that a 17-year-old, a teenager, should have the rug pulled out from under her last minute over this petty nonsense is baffling. It's not petty nonsense if you avoid all family gatherings and aren't present when grandma comes to pick you up for a planned outing. It's rude and disrespectful, especially when you're counting on grandma to pay for college. It's a very harsh lesson, but I don't blame grandma for getting fed up. The promise was reasonably contingent on having a grandparent-grandchild relationship. And if the grandkid chooses to not have that relationship, I don't think she's obliged to keep that promise. The daughter's future isn't ruined, but she's made her own path much harder. You're the jerk. Your daughter is 17. Not only did her family dynamic get flipped on its head, but both sides of her family are now fighting for her love and attention. Why wasn't there an effort to combine family time? She chose the other side of the family at every season. What does this even mean? Your mom promised to pay for her education a long time ago, which means that your 17-year-old daughter hasn't had to worry about saving money this whole time. If she had known this would have been the case earlier, she could have saved money, applied for scholarships, better loans, etc. By the sound of it, she's already been accepted and is preparing to go to college, meaning it's too late to receive any of the previously mentioned possible assistances. You and your mother have basically condemned your daughter to a life full of debt or a life spent unhappy in her profession, all because she hurt your feelings. Not only this, but her older brother has his college completely paid for, and I'm sure he's the golden child in your eyes by the way you described him. You don't think she notices that? You don't think she won't resent him for that? Resent you? Resent your mother? Is this hill you're dying on really worth losing an entire relationship with your daughter? Is your mother okay with ruining their relationship forever? You might have your feelings hurt, but she's still a kid. She doesn't understand complex situations like this, and you're doing nothing but abandoning her on the cusp of her life and career. I'm sorry, but you're the jerk. Do better, and gain some empathy for this kid that you're responsible for the health, success, and happiness of. Source: This was my dad when I was 17. I'm 23 now and don't have much of a relationship with my father. He took my actions when I was 16 to 17 as the complete and whole basis of my character and destroyed me mentally over who he thought I was. I was a kid. Give her a chance to experience life and form her own thoughts and opinions before you tear her life down and burn it in front of her. Edit. Feel free to downvote. I'm not trying to offend OP or say the girl's mom is blameless, just shedding light on the direct consequences of the path he's going down. Well, who do you think is the jerk? Grandma or her granddaughter? Please let us know. I know I sure wouldn't want to pay for someone's college education if they couldn't even be bothered to come visit me every now and then. Yes, you do have to pay your bill. Yesterday, I had my restaurant booked out for a private event with about 150 people, which was held during a big sports event. This doesn't happen very often, and it was only the second private event I've worked on. The first time was an absolute disaster, during which every member of staff cried at least once. Needless to say, we were hoping that this time everything would go a lot smoother. We were working on the information provided by the organizers, which we were led to believe had been communicated to the guests as well. The guests were given pink or gray lanyards, with the pink lanyard indicating that they were paying for drinks as they went, and the gray lanyard indicating that they had a prepaid package with free refills on beer, wines, and soft drinks. However, it's important to note that spirits were not included in the package. The event went super smoothly, with our team getting 2 courses out quickly, and the drinks were flying out of the bar at a rapid pace. We all did a fantastic job. The organizers told us to stop serving drinks at about 1:15 p.m., get the checks paid off, and get everyone ready to depart on their coaches to the game. This is where things started to get interesting. 3 of my 5 tables asked to talk to a manager when I told them that the beer was closed. I'm not sure why they thought the manager could do anything when we were working with the information provided by their organizers. Then one of my tables with gray lanyards got confused when I brought over the bill. One guy asked, "What's that?" I told him it was the bill and explained that the refills of beer were included in their package, but they had to pay for the several double vodkas that they had ordered. He asked, "Since when?" I told him that was the plan from the start because, well, it was. He was not pleased and started yelling at me, saying he had ordered the premium package and wasn't supposed to have to pay for anything. He called it a disgrace and demanded to speak to my manager. After a few minutes of explaining that we were working with the information provided by their organizers, he demanded that I go get someone in charge. Instead of going to my manager, who couldn't do anything, I went straight to the top and spoke to the main organizer. He went to speak to the table, then spoke to my manager. I have no idea what was said, but somehow the guy didn't end up having to pay for the spirits, and they were put on the organizer's tab instead. I understand the guy's perspective, but I'm not the person to be yelled at. In my opinion, it was a lack of organization and clarity on the organizer's part, not ours. Other than that, everything went well. I even received some decent tips, and we were told that we all did very well. I even got a special bottle of wine because I had managed to sell the most of a specific brand of beer we were pushing. However, that one guy did put a bit of a damper on things. Make sure his store is the first one you deliver to. Consider it done. After leaving active duty service, where I served on board a ship, all I wanted to do was drive. So in 1999, I got a job delivering meat in Southern California. It was a tough job dealing with traffic, and my schedule was always tight, with 16 to 20 deliveries each day to local markets. I was mostly given inner-city routes, with markets that had limited space for mid-sized delivery trucks. One of my weekly stops was a small market owned and run by a man whom I will call Ali. Ali was always scheduled to be my 5th or 6th stop and would complain to me every time I showed up that late, after 9 a.m. each time. He said he wanted to be the first delivery of the day. I told him I knew he opened each day after 8 a.m. on weekdays and that I started my route at about 6:15 a.m. Plus, I don't schedule my route, so if he wanted to make sure he was the first delivery of the day, he would have to call Steve, our delivery route supervisor. Ali did call Steve because the very next week I received special instructions that read, "Make sure Ali's Market is your first delivery of the day." I had my normal amounts of stop that day, about 18, and I knew they would all be pushed back at least 2 hours because I knew Ali wouldn't open until 8 a.m., and he wouldn't open the rear door until an hour later. The rear door was for deliveries and trash bin access. I began driving at my usual time, and I arrived at Ali's Market 15 minutes later, and the market was closed. I had my orders, and I made sure Ali's Market was the first one of the day, so I parked and I waited. At 8 a.m., Ali showed up, driving his old Benz around the back of my truck and parking it. He then walked inside through the back door. I waited for him to open the front, but he ignored me. He was busy pretending to supervise the cashier, intentionally ignoring me. So I walked to the meat counter on the back, and the guy there told me he wasn't allowed to take deliveries and that I had to wait for Mr. Ali. At this point, I could have gone to make 2 or 3 deliveries and then returned, but I had my very specific order. As I was walking towards the front to exit the market, I grabbed a newspaper, paid for it, and then told Ali, who was just standing there looking at me, "Let me know when you're ready to take your order. You know where I parked." Ali didn't say a word. He was apparently taking revenge for all those years for his small city market not being the #1 priority of a meat distributor who delivered beef, pork, chicken, cheese, and other refrigerated products from over 12 distribution points throughout the United States. Steve arrived at his desk right after 10 a.m., and the first thing he saw on his computer screen was an alert that my truck had been sitting inert for 4 hours. He called me in a rage, demanding that I explain to him why my truck had been sitting for all that time. I explained that I was following his order to make sure I delivered to Ali's market first. Steve hung up and called Ali. Whatever Steve told Ali made Ali get out of his little market and take delivery of his meat order, which consisted of about 14 boxes of product, if I recall correctly. I then began to rush through the rest of my stops, not wasting any time, and at the end of my day, I was the last driver back to the warehouse. I got an extra $80 on overtime because Ali cried for not being the first delivery of the day. I never returned to see Ali again. Apparently, we dropped his whiny self as a customer. Am I the jerk for pointing out hypocritical rules at my sister's wedding? My sister, 28, female, got married 1 week ago. I, 26, female, have a son who's 4, who is the only grandchild on my side of the family. Everyone loves him and he loves his aunt. During early wedding planning, my sister suggested that she wanted to have a child-free wedding, but I didn't think she was serious as it was so early on. Then when the invitations came out, I saw on the frequently asked questions page that this was, in fact, a child-free wedding. I talked to our mother about it and how I was shocked, but she stayed neutral and I didn't talk to anyone else about it. Now, I'm not one to start fights, so I obliged and found a babysitter. I was a bit upset, but I still tried to be supportive. The wedding day comes and my fiance and I take our seats and wait for the ceremony to start. While waiting, I see my cousin sit behind us with her 3-year-old daughter. I was shocked. It was made very clear to everyone about the no kids rule, so I was sure that my family, who adores my sister, would tell my cousin something. Instead, everyone said hi to them and talked about how cute their kid was. I was appalled and knew my sister would be upset. At the reception, I went up to my mom and asked her what she thought of my cousin bringing her kid. My mom said that it didn't matter that much and that we all should just let it go, but I was furious. How was this fair at all? At one point during the wedding, my cousin, sister, and I went to go take a photo at the photo booth area. After the photo, I turned to my cousin and jokingly said, "I guess child-free wedding means different things to different people." My cousin was shocked and looked at my sister, and my sister told me to knock it off and that everything was fine. I told her, why should I? I followed the rules and left my son at home. My sister told me to calm down, and I told her I was calm, just confused. I guess we drew attention from some of the other guests, and my mother came over and pulled me aside. She told me to stop causing a scene, and I said I'm not causing a scene, but simply asking why different rules apply to different people. My sister came over and told me to stop and that I was ruining her special day. I couldn't believe it. My fiance and I left because I could not stand to be in the same room as my sister then. Ever since the wedding, my mom has been telling me to apologize. I keep telling her that my sister should apologize to me. I haven't spoken to my sister since, and I don't plan on it until I get an apology. Am I the jerk? Edit. People keep saying that I should not have brought this up at the wedding, but when should I have brought it up? It seems worse to bring it up after the fact, doesn't it? Edit 2. Just to be clear, I originally wasn't mad at my sister. I was upset at my cousin and slightly upset at my family for not saying anything when they saw her kid. I didn't want a fight to happen, just for them to hold her accountable. However, I got upset at my sister when she got mad at me for bringing it up. I feel like I deserved to let my cousin know how I really felt, and I wanted my sister's support since I followed the rules. You want an apology because you weren't special enough at her wedding. If the bride didn't want to confront the cousin, you had absolutely no business saying anything, jokingly or not. Hint, you weren't joking. This is evident by the hissy fit that you are still throwing. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. Your poor sister already had to deal with one guest ignoring her wishes and probably decided to just let it go and focus on enjoying her wedding day. I'm guessing the last thing she wanted to deal with was confronting your rude cousin and kick out a 3-year-old. There weren't different rules for different people. Your cousin just decided to ignore the rules, and your sister decided to make the best of an annoying situation. Instead of being empathetic and following your sister's lead, you decided to make it about you and your feelings and made a scene. You owe your sister and mom an apology. You're the jerk. Someone else broke the rules. You got upset and created a scene because you didn't also get to break the rules. None of that is on your sister. Karen ruined my son's car.
I'm pressing charges. I'm 39, male, and my son, 17, Bryce, dated our neighbor Lana, who's 17, for a year. They broke up mid-January for reasons I don't know. I won't sugarcoat this. I never liked Lana. She always seemed a little unhinged, controlling and aggressive. She's always demanding Bryce's attention, and there were quite a few times when she showed up to our house out of nowhere, whether it was 7 a.m. or 11 p.m., because Bryce wasn't answering his phone, screaming and calling him a cheater when it wasn't even like that. The thought of our son being mistreated by his girlfriend made us worry so much. My wife and I tried to talk him out of that relationship. We said how it wasn't normal nor healthy. We didn't want to force the breakup because we feared Lana would lash out to him, so we tried to do it in a sneaky way. We don't know if it worked, but they ended up breaking up. He said that after he broke up with her, Lana didn't contact him, which was weird because he was expecting her to go nuts. But I told him that if fate didn't care, he better not tease it. Now, the problem is that we bought my son a car for Christmas. Nothing fancy, but enough to get him to school, his job, and eventually college. He parks it in our driveway outside our home. Ever since the month began, we had been finding scratches all over the car. We knew Lana was doing it, but since it was minimal, my son decided not to do anything, even if we could prove that it was her. We have cameras. Still, something smelled bad for me, so I decided to switch one of the cameras facing his car directly just in case. Well, 2 weeks ago, we got up and found my son's car covered in a lot of crap. Paint, glue, feathers, confetti. The door handles were wrecked. Flat tires, paint all over the windows. You get the picture. Bryce and my wife were so distraught. We called the police, and I handed them the security camera footage that showed Lana and her brother, 23 male, destroying my son's car. We pressed charges, and needless to say, Lana's brother went straight to jail. But since she's still a minor, her parents want to make a deal, but I refused. I don't think she should get a way out. Before the police were here, she was laughing her face off, and she tried to play it cool. If she thought this was funny, then she's old enough to face the consequences. My wife and I plan to stand our ground. They said they'll buy my son a better car and put Lana on therapy, but it is not enough. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This is the wake-up call that she needs. This is also the wake-up call that her brother and her parents need. I can't picture my very much adult brothers helping me wreck my ex's car just because I'm bitter. They'd rather snitch to my parents and help me avoid getting time in jail than being the cool bro. Not the jerk. I could see the older brothers going along with it if she lied to them about why she was doing it. Revenge for cheating, for example.
Karen invites me to her dinner party at a fancy restaurant, tries to stick me with the bill after we've all finished eating. So I, 25 female, went out for dinner with my sister-in-law, who's 28 female, her bachelorette party this past weekend. Between my sister-in-law and my husband, 26 male, sister-in-law has always been the golden child of the family. Growing up, my in-laws coddled her and gave her everything that she wanted, while my husband always got the short end of the stick. She was always the popular girl in school, cheerleader, lots of friends, all the boys loved her, while my husband was always a little more nerdy and got picked on quite a bit. Even my in-laws would give him a hard time about this and say he needed to be more like his sister. Well, fast forward to today. Both my husband and I went to top schools, got our degrees, and currently have very well-paying jobs in tech. I'm not trying to sound braggy, this is just for context, but we live a very, very comfortable life. Sister-in-law still currently lives at home with my in-laws where they foot all of her bills. She had my niece, who's 4, with her ex and is currently on marriage number 2. This past weekend, I was invited to this fancy upscale restaurant in my city for sister-in-law's bachelorette party. She just wanted to do a nice dinner. There were 8 of us in total. At the end of the dinner, the bill comes out and the waiter hands it to me. I'm sitting there confused for a second until sister-in-law speaks up and is like, "My parents and I were talking and were thinking you and my brother can handle the bill for this as a wedding gift since you're not financially contributing to my wedding." I stared at her, shocked for a moment, and I was like, "And you didn't think to bring this up to me beforehand?" She started going off about how we're so well off, so what's the big deal? And she's sure my brother would have no issue with this. I asked her why her fiance doesn't foot the bill, or my in-laws, and where in her right mind does she think it's okay to spring this on me? She started going on about how we're the wealthiest in both her and her fiance's family, and that she didn't think I would act like this and would say yes. I told her, "Well, sorry, but I'm not your parents. Don't expect handouts from me." She called me selfish, and I called her an entitled brat, paid for my half of the bill, and I left. Well, as expected, my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and even some of the cousins and aunts on my husband's side have been absolutely furious with me and are expecting me to apologize for my comments. I told them absolutely not. My husband is 100% on my side, and we are debating on not even going to the wedding. I was talking to my mom, and she thinks I took it too far with the comments and should just apologize to keep the peace. Am I the jerk? Info: the bill was close to $1,000. Not the jerk. Don't apologize. No matter how much money you make, you are not expected to 1. Contribute to your sister-in-law's wedding, 2. Foot the bill for an entire bachelorette party that you were attending as a guest, and 3. De-escalate her temper tantrum once she doesn't get her way. The burden of payment for a bachelorette party usually falls on the maid of honor and bridesmaids and is arranged for ahead of time, or the bride. Edit. And a far more common occurrence is that everyone pays their own way, but chips in for the bride so that she's taken care of. But again, that's settled way ahead of time. Not the jerk. I guarantee that you were only invited as a setup to try and make you pay. Don't go to the wedding, and I'd honestly consider how much contact you want to maintain with sister-in-law and your in-laws moving forward. It's clear they see you two as nothing but an ATM. Not the jerk. You were not asked beforehand. You were voluntold at the very moment the bill arrived. I'd have gone with, "Well, it's nice that you decided that without telling anyone, but I didn't bring my credit cards with me," and I'd leave. Only do what's in my job title? Fine. Good luck paying employees. So I work for a construction company as an inventory admin. My job is to basically schedule counts of our warehouse and input the numbers they give me for inventory. Then try to see what the problem is when the numbers on the last count and the current count don't add up. There's a little bit more to it, but I will not bore you with the specifics. The problem with this job is that when you've been doing it long enough and you're good at it, there's less work to do. In the beginning, when counting one rack out of 60 racks of material would take a few days, it was fine because I was always busy. But now that everything is in order, the entire warehouse can be counted in 3 days. This leaves me bored for most of the time. So to fix this, I studied up on our cloud-based ERP service that we use for all internal and external transactions and have become sort of an expert on it. Every single aspect of this company uses this ERP service to do their job. Timesheets, HR, payroll, accounting, scheduling, management, manufacturing, everything. It all runs through this ERP service. So it's very important that this service is up and running perfectly 24/7. I became so proficient in this service that our VP decided to cut ties with our consultants of the ERP because I could do what they did, but better, quicker, and much more cheaper. For reference, we were paying these consultants $5,000 a month just to be on standby if we needed them for some sort of problem that could arise from using this ERP, and had to dish out more money to fix those problems depending on how many hours of their own time was spent on fixing them. Not sure their exact rate, but it was something like $200 an hour, and they took weeks to fix anything, while I could fix the problem in time for my daily afternoon break. I never got an official job title or raise of any kind for being an expert on this service. The company just saw me being able to do it and let me fix things that happened so that they no longer needed this outside help. I wasn't too upset because it gave me something to do, so I was glad to help the company save money, even if none of that money fell my way. Skip ahead a few months. We now have a new warehouse manager, and someone in the warehouse messes something up in inventory by sending a bunch of materials to the wrong job with no records of it being shipped. We're talking $500,000 mess up here. In the same day, our ERP had an update that caused a bunch of bugs with our accounting department. So I decided to work on the ERP problem first because the warehouse mistake is more of a delay mistake and not actually stopping anybody from doing their job at the moment, while this accounting problem means our bills are not able to be paid. You can guess what kind of issues we will have if bills are not paid. The ERP bugs turn out to be quite big and numerous, so it ends up taking me a couple of days to figure it out. But I fix it before any bills are actually due and decided to take lunch a little early to celebrate a victory. Crisis averted. New warehouse manager storms into my office after I get back from lunch and is livid. Apparently, the bosses were pinning the blame on him for the warehouse mistake. And considering he's the one who oversees shipments and personnel in the warehouse, the blame is rightfully placed. He stays laying into me, asking why I haven't fixed the problem yet, yelling and screaming like a kid. I tried explaining that I was fixing an ERP issue and have not had time to look at the warehouse problem yet. He gets even more angry and notes that it's funny how I have time to take early lunches but not do my job. That started to tick me off, but I held my tongue and I kept calm about the situation. He then ordered me to only do what is in my job title and to leave the ERP BS to the people competent enough to handle it, as he put it. Since this guy was technically my supervisor, I had no choice but to obey. I asked him to send me that in writing, and he snarks and storms back into his office. 5 minutes later, I get an email stating that under no circumstances am I to work on anything related to ERP unless it involves inventory. Cue malicious compliance. I do nothing but inventory from that point forward, knowing darn well that we would be essentially coasting until we hit a problem that I would refuse to fix. Sure enough, not even a week later, I get an email from HR that some sort of bug in the ERP system was preventing them from accessing payroll to pay employees this week. I reply with an apology that I'm no longer able to work on ERP bugs due to supervisor and to refer to the ERP system help guide for further assistance. I knew the help guide was not going to help her in the slightest, but it was no longer my problem, so I was not going to deal with it. Skip a few days later to Friday. I checked my bank account in the morning before getting to work and laughed because there was no money deposited. That problem never got fixed. I hurry up and get to work, excited to see the chaos unfold, and what I was expecting was an understatement. When I show up to work, I see the entire warehouse staff of 50 people walking out of the front door. I stopped one and asked why they're leaving, and they replied with, "I didn't get paid today, so I'm not coming back until I do." I go into the office and see the warehouse manager in a panic. He has jobs that need material and nobody to load it onto trucks or deliver. I ask him if he needs help with anything, and he just screams at me to leave his office because he's getting tons of phone calls from superintendents of jobs asking why our material has not arrived yet. I pass by HR on the way to my office and see a bunch of the bosses huddled up over her computer with angry and confused expressions on their faces. I guess trying to figure out the problem. I felt bad for her because it really was something out of her control, but I knew she would ultimately be okay because she had been there for so long that they would never fire her. When I get to my office, I see the VP waiting for me there. He has a very upset expression on his face. When we get inside, he demands to know why I did not fix the problem in HR when she emailed me about it. I replied that I'm no longer allowed to work on ERP problems as it is not in my job title. He gets the most shocked look on his face and asked why all of a sudden I had a change of heart. I show him the email from warehouse manager and I could see the dots connect in his head. He immediately storms out and I see him heading straight to the warehouse manager's office. They were in there for a few hours, but eventually he comes back to my office. He seems calmer now and asks me politely if I can fix the problem in HR and if I can resume fixing the ERP if needed. At this point, I liked the relief of responsibility and I told him I would only do it if he put it officially in my job title along with a raise. His calmness turned to anger again and he says, "I can't believe you," as he storms out and returns to his office. A few hours later, he sends out a mass email that he's hired the old ERP consultants to fix the problem and that next week, everyone would be paid for the money they are owed, along with the money they earned if they return to work. This one surprised me, as he would rather pay over $60,000 a year to consultants than give me a few extra bucks an hour for better work. I think he expected me to change my mind and just do it for my own paycheck, but I decided to wait because I knew how these consultants were, and if they managed to fix this problem in a week, I wouldn't believe it. Most of the warehouse staff agreed to return, but were still upset about not getting paid. Sure enough, next Friday comes around, nobody gets paid again. At this point, it's becoming a real problem, and the entire staff is becoming agitated. They have bills to pay. I even heard a bunch of the warehouse talking about some competitors nearby they could go work for. At this point, I even considered just fixing the problem because the warehouse didn't deserve to be treated like that due to poor management. Maybe I am the jerk here for this, but I'm severely underpaid and can barely afford my apartment. There's no reason I should do extra work for free. That same day, the VP returns to my office and hands me papers. These papers said that I would be promoted to a newly created position that dealt with inventory and ERP upkeep. It would be its own department and he would be my direct supervisor. Also came with a hefty raise. All I had to do was sign and agree. I looked up at him after reading the paper, and he had the saddest look on his face. Please just sign it. The consultant said it would take them weeks to get around to fixing it due to the high volume of clients they've taken on, and we can't keep skipping paychecks. I happily signed it and immediately got to work on the HR issue. Managed to even fix it that same day. It was just a simple problem with the permissions of HR and payroll in the ERP due to the update. Am I the jerk for wearing a wedding dress at a wedding? So my friend, 20, female, and I, 19, male, have been friends for a few years, and she recently got engaged. A week ago, I got a DM from her for a small costume party she was hosting as a celebration for her getting engaged. I asked if there was a theme, and she said there wasn't. I'm a cosplayer, so I had a lot of choices. I didn't want to rock up in an anime cosplay, so I thought it would be funny to go to an engagement party as the corpse bride. I arrived at her house yesterday, and everything seemed normal. A few people complimented my costume, and I was having a lot of fun. After 10 minutes, my friend's fiance walked out in a black tuxedo and announced this was actually their wedding. Apparently, my friend saw a video of someone doing this and wanted to do the same. He asked us all to go to the backyard for the ceremony to begin. I went straight to him. I asked him if I should quickly go home and change my outfit, and that I would get back before it started. He told me it was fine since I didn't know this was the wedding. I trusted him and followed everyone outside. They got married and everything seemed good. The reception was just in their house again, so everyone just walked back inside and picked up where they left off. I tried talking to my friend and celebrating with her, but she kept making excuses to not talk to me. I assumed it was just because she was tired from the big day and wanted some alone time. I didn't bother her after that, and the party soon ended. I got home, and half an hour passed when my phone started getting notifications. I checked it, and it was my friend texting me. She was going off on me and telling me how I ruined her wedding. I was really confused and asked her what I did. That only made her more angry. She told me it was basic knowledge not to wear a wedding dress to a wedding. I reminded her that I had no idea it was a wedding, and that I asked her now husband if I should go and change, and he said no, it was fine. She didn't respond, but I got a text from her husband. He asked why I would tell her he said it was fine. I told him he said it was fine. Then he said how I should have changed anyways, and it's my fault that the two are now fighting over this. I've tried texting her that I was sorry, and if I had known, I wouldn't have done it. I woke up today and saw her and her husband have blocked me on everything. So, am I the jerk for not changing out of the wedding dress when I found out it was actually a wedding? Edit. I'm a guy. I cosplayed the character Emily from The Corpse Bride and had blue paint all over. I'm also Australian, and I've never heard of a costume party meaning fancy. Everyone was dressed up in funny costumes. Not the jerk. The facts of this are pretty simple. 1. You were told this is a costume party, so you wore a costume. 2. When asked about a theme, you were not given any restrictions. 3. They sprung a surprise wedding on you. 4. Once you realized this, you asked the groom if you should go home and change, and the groom said no. They had multiple chances to get you to change, and they didn't take any of them, so getting mad with you after the fact doesn't make sense. Update. Would I be the jerk if I kept my dad's dog against my girlfriend's wishes? I, 32 male, and my girlfriend Ellen, 33 female, have been together for 2 years, 7 months, and have been living in the same, my house, for 8 months. The issue in question arose when my dad, who's 58, gave me his dog, Mila, who's 6. She was a rescue, so we don't know her exact age. Before I had even met Ellen, I made a promise with my dad to take Mila in if he couldn't care for her, which is something I discussed with Ellen before she even moved in, and she had no complaints back then. My dad fell ill 4 months ago, and of course, I took Mila in. He's not getting better, so he asked me to officially adopt her, and I agreed. Ellen was furious that I made this decision without consulting her, despite me having told her about the arrangement in the past. Although I feed, walk, groom, and manage all of Mila's needs, financially and otherwise, Ellen said she had to put her foot down on the issue. I asked Ellen if there were any specific reasons she was so opposed to us keeping Mila, and she stated the following. She said that since she works from home full-time, whereas I'm closer to 50-50, that I can't understand how much having a dog around affects her work. She makes clay art, crockery, that sort of thing. Having a dog is expensive, and it will be a drain of our finances, which are not joined, I'll note, and I've paid for everything so far. It will make it more difficult for us if we ever want to have a kid. Our house is not huge, so it doesn't make sense to have a big dog like Mila. She has friends who have severe dog hair allergies, and she doesn't want them to feel they can't visit anymore. None of her complaints had anything to do with any bad behavior. Mila does not jump on people or furniture, bite, bark at visitors. She will follow commands to leave a room if they're given to her, etc. I see that these are reasonable objections to not taking Mila in, but I stayed firm in my position. Ellen said that if I loved her, I would make other arrangements, and at this stage, I was getting a bit angry, so what I said next may have been a little harsh. I told her, "Love has nothing to do with this. My first responsibilities are my dad and Mila, and nothing you say will convince me to send her away. If you seriously can't cope with that, you can get out of my home." Ellen burst into tears at this and left to go stay with her mom, citing that I clearly need time to think this over. A bunch of her friends who know me have been telling me that I'm a total jerk for prioritizing a dog over my girlfriend of nearly 3 years, but my own friends have been telling me to stand my ground. Ellen has been radio silent, has not come home, and is not responding to my texts. So I guess I'm looking for some unbiased opinions on the matter. Would I be the jerk if I kept Mila? Update. So I guess it's customary to give an update on these things, and since a few people started following me after my previous post, I figured I ought to finish the story. It's only been a few days, but a lot has happened. Ellen finally agreed to meet up earlier today. Ironically, though people were telling me to break up with her, she ended up doing it first. We talked over coffee for a few hours, and what many of you suggested was true. Her real reason for not wanting to keep Mila was separate from all of the ones she offered me. She said that she thinks that I've just changed too much since we got her. And when I asked what she meant, she stated that I'm less passionate and engaged with her than before. I don't really know if I can do anything with that, whether it's to do with the stress of my father's condition or not, but she basically said I'm not the person she fell in love with anymore. She's packing up her things even as I type this. It's hard in a way that I can't describe, like all of a sudden I'm losing all the people I love. But I also know that I can't control her decision to leave if that's what she wants to do. In brighter news, Mila is doing well. Some of you were concerned that Ellen might spirit her away, but she's still very much around. I brought her to the hospital park area to see my dad, and she was over the moon to be with him again, so I'll probably keep that up as long as he's able. I've also taken up the recommendations to find a doggy daycare for the days I'm in the office. I'll start dropping her off there next week, and if all goes well, I'm sure she'll make plenty of friends. There isn't much else to say other than thank you. There's been an enormous amount of love and support coming from this subreddit. People were sending dozens of heartfelt messages. I even had to turn my phone off because of all the notifications. I wanted to let you know that all of your kind words mean so much to me, even if I felt a little too awkward to respond to most of the messages. It's a strange and difficult time all around for Mila and I, but we'll try to navigate it as best we can. So basically, she's blaming the dog when it sounds to me like her real issue is a stunning lack of empathy for the fact that it sounds like you're losing your dad. Which, as someone who's going through something similar with an aging parent, I'm so sorry, OP. Seriously though, this is not about a dog. This sounds a lot more like her expecting you to put her before literally everything, even when she didn't object to what you told her before she moved in, and even when she knows you're losing your dad and Mila is a part of your dad. As much as it hurts right now, honestly, she's showing you who she is. She's showing you that she isn't up for any kind of flexibility when things get hard or sad. I know it's hard now, but in the end, think about things like having kids with her and so on. If she thinks the dog is disruptive and reduces direct engagement and passion, just wait until she has a kid. And no, becoming a parent doesn't mean that you are no longer an individual with wants and needs, but it does mean that you have to be flexible and willing to reprioritize at times. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to my niece's wedding after she attempted to sabotage mine? I'll be honest, my sister and I never had the best relationship. She's 15 years older than me, so maybe we didn't have much of a connection, and she's always been resentful towards me. She's treated me like an outcast and would often turn her kids against me and encourage them to insult me, disrespect me, and treat me like dirt. My mom would always tell me to be the bigger person, so I would always forgive when they would apologize or act all nice again. During lockdowns, my sister and her husband, not my niece's father, kicked her out because my sister was having many mood swings. She has 4 other kids and got them to participate in kicking out my niece. She called me and I quickly went to pick her up, and I met her on the curb with trash bags and with my sister refusing to open the door. So I took her in my home where she stayed for 6 months, and she even secured an apartment. Once my niece, who was 20 at the time, got her apartment, My sister and her husband convinced her to move back in, and my niece did. And then the same niece turned on me, and I felt very sad because she was in my home, and I did everything for her when her own mom discarded her. Fast forward to 2021. She does the same thing with her 16-year-old son, and he called me. And again, I picked him up and I let him stay with me. At the time, my now husband and I were planning a wedding, and of course, regardless of our differences, there was no way I couldn't invite my sister and her kids. Also, it was during the height of lockdown, so we were very limited and the church only accepted close family. When I invited my sister, her and her kids ridiculed me. My sister even said that my attitude is too disgusting to get married. They're not coming because I don't deserve to get married. They even blocked me, except my niece, who promised me that she'll be there and promised to act as a witness. The day of, she didn't show up. No call, no nothing. Thankfully, the photographer was nice enough to be a second witness for us. My mom called my niece asking why she did this. My niece said, "I don't even know what kind of wedding it is. I don't see the point in all this," then hung up. I was broken and in tears. I know my sister put them up to it, but I thought my niece would have risen above it, given all that I've done for her when my sister, her mom, did what she did to her. I moved on, but I vowed to never speak to them again. My husband and I are happily married, and we have a new baby, and we're thriving. Now, my niece has met someone, and she's getting married. My mom told me to mark my calendar because we're going. I refused and reminded her of what they did on my wedding. My mom told me to stop living in the past and be the bigger person. I even cried to her, and she gave me a blank stare, then told me that no one thinks about her and that I'll regret my actions when she's gone. She said I'm being incredibly selfish and bitter, and she's shocked that I'm not over it. I'm still refusing to go. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. At every turn, you have acted with love, compassion, kindness, and honor. And in every instance, it was thrown back in your face, usually after costing you considerable time, energy, and money. Standing up for yourself and your right to basic respect and dignity is not bad. I'm sorry that you've been treated so bad, and even more sorry that your mom has essentially betrayed your trust by downplaying your hurt and siding with them. You're building a new family now with your husband and your sweet new baby, and your friends. This new family will cherish you and be grateful for all of your kindness. Stick with your new family and let the family of origin go. There's no place for you there. Go where you're loved and stay there. Not the jerk. Be the bigger person is a BS way of telling you to continue to accept the mistreatment of others. Skip the wedding 100%. But not because of your wedding, but because they are toxic people who don't treat you with respect. Just because they had the good fortune to share genetic material with you does not mean that you have to keep them in your life. You're an adult, you're a wife, and a mother. It's okay to remove people from your life who don't treat you with love and respect. It's okay to remove toxic people, even toxic family members. Go low or no contact with them and go be happy. Surround yourself with people that lift you up, that bring joy to your life. Go be happy.
My Karen sister is trying to steal my fiance. I'm 24, female, and my sister, who's 23, had my nephew, Joe, during her first year in college. The father is absent in his life and only pays child support. She has always hated the idea of my nephew growing up without a father figure, and since our only brother is 17 and our dad passed 10 years ago, she dated recklessly for a while and introduced him to a bunch of dudes. 3 years ago, I met my now fiance, Gabriel, 28, male. He's really sweet and he adores my family. He's financially stable and is good with kids, has a bunch of nephews on his own, and comes from a good big family. We've decided to be child-free, and if something happens to my sister and a few of Gabe's siblings, we're meant to be their legal guardians. For the past year, my sister has grown comfortable with pushing Joe around Gabe. She always invites him to my nephew's activities, which is fine, but she acts as if Gabe were her guest, and I'm his +1, not otherwise. Plus, my brother used to be the one who got invited, and he's not anymore. She asks Gabe to drive her and Joe to places, and my mom pointed out how they look like a family when he does it. She jokes about how much of a dad Gabriel is for Joe, and she had the audacity to ask him once if he was comfortable with adopting Joe, but she was drunk, so I'll give her that. Neither Gabe or I are comfortable with this. He doesn't know how to push it aside without hurting their feelings. My mom has told my sister countless times how this is inappropriate, but my sister always gets defensive and says that Joe chose him and is not her fault. Things blew up last weekend when Joe asked Gabriel if he could call him Dad because Mom said it was fine. My sister was looking at them with the biggest smile on her face, and I could notice how my mom and my brother were expecting his answer. Neither of them agreed with it though. He sat Joe on his knee and kindly explained how he wasn't his dad or even a dad figure, that he was Aunt OP's soon-to-be husband, and that made him his favorite uncle. But even if he wasn't his dad, he would never leave him and they'll always be best friends. Joe, being the sweet kid he is, laughed and smiled and said that it was okay. Then he ran to the living room to play with something. I think the situation resolved itself okay, but my sister didn't like it and started to fight with us. My mom kept telling her to shut up, but she was saying things like, "What's wrong with you two? How can you say no to a little kid? He sees you as a father, so you should be proud of that." I had enough, and I told her that Gabriel wasn't Joe's dad and that she needed to stop acting as if he was, because it was honestly embarrassing. She called me a selfish jerk and said that I was jealous of her kid. I just rolled my eyes and we decided to leave after. She later sent me a text saying that it was best if we step out of Joe's life for a while, or we will end up confusing him because he doesn't understand that Gabriel is not his dad. But as far as I could see, he understood it pretty well. ETA. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that we are already Joe's legal guardians, but if something happens to my sister, and we hope it never does, we'll be taking care of him. Also, my sister is not right, I agree with that, but I doubt she's ever violent. Not the jerk, but you know that your sister wants your fiance, right? My dad always sides with his girlfriend and her daughter. My parents split custody. It's pretty random. Some days I'm home, and sometimes I'm by my dad's. I'm 15, female. Dad started dating Jane a while ago, maybe a year. She has a daughter, Mandy, that's 12 or 13. Then they started spending a lot of time at my dad's. They have their own apartment, but they're still always with him. The first time they stayed over when I was there, somehow Mandy ended up in my bed. Her mom has this cot/bed thing that she bought by my dad's for her, but somehow I woke up in the middle of the night and she was in my bed. I kicked her out. Then my dad and Jane said, that was mean, and I have a full anyway, so I should share. There's other stuff. I have a chair in my dad's living room I got for my gift. It's comfy, and when I move out, it'll go with me. Well, Mandy always wants to race for the chair. Even when I win the race, my dad makes me let her sit in it because they're guests. So I end up sitting on the floor because my dad has a recliner and Jane lays across the couch. So I stay in my room instead. My dad has tried to get me to come out of my room and be with them. But why when I have to sit on the floor like a dog? He keeps saying I'm being a difficult teenager. That's not it though. One time my mom and I went and did some stuff before she dropped me off. She had brought me a blanket that had my favorite team's logo on it. I was excited to sleep with it. Stupid, I know. So she let me take it to my dad's. My dad made me share it with Mandy because it wasn't fair that I got something and Mandy didn't. It's not just the blanket it's happened with. It's anything that I have to share. But if Mandy has something I'd like to use, he tells me it's hers, and if she doesn't want to let me use it, she doesn't have to. One time, Mandy was reading one of my books, and Jane and my dad started fighting. Jane wanted to leave, so Mandy wanted to take my book, but I said no, so she wouldn't leave. My dad yells at me to, just let her have it. They made up, so I got it back, but if they didn't, I would have lost one of my favorite books. My dad and I had plans to go ice fishing, just him and I, something we've done since I was 7. Well, he brought Jane and Mandy along. All they did was complain. It's too cold. Fish are gross. This is boring. So we left early. He said, sometimes you have to compromise. When I got home, I was mad. My mom was annoyed and called him, and they argued, and he talked to me and repeated his compromising crap. I was supposed to go back to his place a few days later, but decided I didn't want to go. I never even spent time with just him anymore, so what's the point in going there? I told my mom, and she said it was my choice. So we told him. He said, I'm just used to being an only child, and I can't be spoiled my whole life. And I can't run away whenever there's a problem. Well, since then, his family is trying to get me to go back too. Am I the jerk for not wanting to visit my dad anymore? Edit. Some people have said to go to family counseling. He won't do that. He put me in therapy a few years back because I wasn't doing my homework. Seriously, that's the reason. Then when my therapist started calling him out on his parenting, He didn't want to go anymore, and my mom had to take me. My therapist even called him to try to talk to him, and my dad ignored it. Not the jerk. Your dad is failing you as a parent. Go back, with your mom waiting, and pack up every important item you have at your dad's so that Mandy can't get her grubby little hands on your stuff. Karen neighbor calls the cops on my band for practicing. I recently moved with my family to a new rental in an upscale suburb. Our house is the worst one on the street, but we have a really cool wooden barn that we use as a 4-car garage in the back. It's old and not in great condition, but it looks awesome. My mom was in a band in her earlier days, and my brother and I are now in bands that perform locally. We've started practicing in the barn on Sunday afternoons, generally between around 2 and 5 p.m., and we always make sure to stop before 6 p.m. The first time we practiced, someone called the cops on us. It was so frustrating because we weren't doing anything wrong. Luckily, the police arrived and my mom explained the situation. They listened to our music for a while, took a really cool photo with us and their police car, which would make an amazing album cover, and told us we weren't doing anything wrong before leaving. But the following weekend, the same thing happened again. The police arrived and told us that it was a nuisance complaint, and they would follow up with the complainant. They warned us that if they received another complaint, action would be taken. The next day, my mom received a random passive-aggressive note in our mailbox. It threatened that if we didn't stop practicing, more action would be taken. Even though the police had assured my mom that we weren't doing anything wrong, she decided to take some steps to reduce the sound by putting some foam on the barn walls. A week later, my mom received an email from the owner we rent from, along with a copy of a letter from a neighbor complaining about us. It was a big mistake on the neighbor's part because the letter had the neighbor's home and address on it. It turns out that the complainant was the neighbor who backs onto our property. My mom responded by explaining the situation and sending the police photo to the owner. To our surprise, they laughed and thought the whole thing was quite amusing. My mom has asked our neighbors on both sides if the noise bothers them, and both have said that while it can be loud, they quite enjoy it. Both my brother and I are pretty talented, so it's not just trash noise. However, my mom is a little worried about what this neighbor will do next. We hope they can see we're not causing any harm and just trying to follow our passion for music. I have a neighbor who practices his drums inside the house, across the street, on the other side of the block about 5 houses down. So I kind of feel for the neighbors. It's probably loud in their house. I love local bands, but hearing it every Sunday instead of peace and quiet would be horrid. I feel bad for the neighborhood. I think of my 17-year-old trying to cram a few hours of studying in, babies trying to take a nap, folks trying to kick back with a glass of wine, and here goes the band just like clockwork. No thanks. We had neighbors across the street who were frat boys in a family neighborhood. Dad bought the house for them and their friends to live in. They practiced 4 to 5 times a week for 3 to 4 hours at a time. As the mom of a newborn at the time, and now 1-year-old, it was extremely frustrating and exhausting. We talked to them and they just didn't care. So we called the police over and over until the police were annoyed with us and would finally come immediately. Contacted the HOA over and over until they actually did something. We were in the process of starting a civil suit with decibel readings and everything, and then they got enough fines and violations and tickets from the police that they finally stopped. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbor? Please let us know. I despise all noise. Update. Am I the jerk for choosing the golden child over my other sister? I, 26, male, am the older brother of 2 sisters, Maya, who's 19, and Tia, who's 21. Our parents are complete jerks, and Maya was their golden child, and honestly, a complete and utter spoiled jerk. I get that's harsh to say about a kid, but she was. She got special treatment and would always get away with anything. Our parents basically encouraged it, despite basically leaving me to raise my sisters so they could go enjoy themselves. When I was 18, Tia was 13, and Maya was 11, I moved out. I stayed in contact with Tia, though I quickly gave up on trying to connect with Maya, honestly. Our parents and Maya were absolutely horrible to Tia while I was gone. So when she was 18, Tia moved out and has stayed with me. I've made her get some therapy and done my best to be a good brother, and she's managed to be a lot happier since. Though after that, I basically didn't see our parents or Maya. However, last November, Maya randomly reached out to us. Tia just ignored it, but Maya is still my little sister, so I gave her a chance. In the time without us, she had really missed us
and realized just how spoilt and cruel she was acting. Apparently, part of how she treated Tia was jealousy of how I was so close to her, but not to Maya, though it obviously didn't justify it. She had felt guilty for a while, but was scared to reach out in case we'd reject her. She felt really sincere and was really apologetic and seemed ashamed. I forgave her and we started talking a lot. I became close to Maya really quickly. We get along great now, and we're actually pretty similar. Unfortunately, Tia refuses to forgive her or even respond. I think she's being a little unfair, but I understand how she feels. From talking, I noticed that Maya seems to be having a hard time at home. She wasn't going to say anything about it, but ended up spilling the beans when I pressed her. Our parents basically turned on her the moment we left. She wasn't the golden child anymore and had to suffer our parents' BS. Honestly, I'm ashamed to admit, but I never considered how our parents would treat her with us gone. But with how horrible our parents are, I wanted to ask her to move in with me. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm the renter. The rental agreement and bills and everything are all under my name. Tia contributes, but since she's still in university and my little sister, it's much less and unofficial. But when I brought up the idea, Tia was serious. She rejected it. I tried to compromise and talk, but it went nowhere. So in the end, I told Tia I'm offering and that she can be civil or I can help her move somewhere else. Maya accepted, coming to stay next week, and Tia is upset and feels I'm choosing the golden child over her. But I'm not. Maya is suffering and I want to help. She's a different person now. I understand Tia hurts and I get her anger, but Maya also needs me right now. Tia is still angry and our friends think it was a jerk move. But Maya is my sister and I don't think it's wrong to help her. I helped Tia back then too. There are a few things I want to clear up. 1. Maya isn't lying about this. I know my parents, and Maya didn't even want to tell me about her issues at home. There's basically no chance it's a lie, and she's tried and tried to talk and apologize to Tia, but Tia just won't let her. I know what she did in the past was horrible, but she isn't just manipulating me to hurt Tia. She genuinely hated how she was and just wants to live somewhere safe and happy and loved. 2. I get it wasn't enough, but the timeline was admittedly poorly written. We started discussing it last month. She knew this decision for a couple of weeks. While I now see it was misguided and cruel, it wasn't just a week. Thanks to everyone for their perspective. I didn't realize how naive I was being in thinking this would work out. I'm going to try to see if some friends can take Maya in for now, and maybe if she can get her own place. I'm going to try to be there for both of them and ask Tia to forgive me for being so short-sighted and stupid. I hope they can eventually work things out, but like people are saying, it might just be a stupid pipe dream. I think the best plan is to help Maya get a cheap flat or something nearby, and I'll help out where she needs it. Update. I posted this original story last year, trying to help my golden child sister Maya at the expense of my other sister, Tia. I didn't expect so many responses or the hate that I got, though I now realize how badly I messed up. While I still think how people wrote about Maya was unfair, how I treated Tia was cruel and ignorant. I was trying to help everyone and be practical, but I neglected to properly consider the emotional side. The responses were a wake-up call, and I realized I was just going to ruin everything. While it wasn't meant that way, it would just hurt Tia and ruin our relationship. I managed to convince some friends to let Maya stay with them and looked for a place. Currently, Tia still lives with me, while I found a cheap one-bedroom for Maya. It's been rough financially, but I managed to get everything my sisters need. A few sacrifices don't matter compared to them. Maya needed help adjusting and learning to be independent, so I did have to focus on her initially, and Tia absolutely hated me giving her any attention, so it was extremely difficult at first. But it got a lot better as Maya adjusted and grew more independent, and I could balance my time better. It's not perfect, but we've gotten into a rhythm the best we can. Maya has grown a lot and can mostly live by herself now, though I obviously still help. Therapy has really helped her, and she's made a lot of friends at university. While she still wants Tia's forgiveness, she's accepted it's not in her control and to focus on living her life and improving herself. I'm really happy she's free of our parents' influence. She's nothing like she used to be, though I do wish I had tried harder when she was younger rather than just giving up. Tia isn't completely happy. I don't think she'll ever forgive Maya. I've done my best to make it clear that I love her, and Maya isn't my favorite, but it's been hard. We get joint therapy and that helps a lot, but she still wishes it was just us. Still, she's finally able to understand that helping Maya isn't rejecting her. I'm so thankful and lucky Tia could forgive me. She means the world to me. I never intended to hurt her, though I clearly completely messed up in my approach. We basically just avoid the Maya situation and have managed to get back to normal. She's such a strong woman. I'm honestly so proud of her and so ashamed of how short-sighted I was. As selfish as it is, a part of me will always wish Tia could forgive her, but I know that's impossible and selfish. I don't think Tia will ever fully accept that Maya is a part of my life. The most I'll get is Tia and Maya being in one building for my wedding, but honestly, that's enough for me. While it's not a fairy tale ending, everything is going well. I'm glad I posted and was able to fix my horrible mistake. Don't listen to all the BS. Reddit loves a story with a bad guy they can hate on and a victim they can sympathize with. What you're doing and sacrificing for your sisters is beyond admirable. You're a good person, and the world needs more people like you. I hope you too can find your peace someday. The irony of the bulk of these posters here implying you're unempathetic for caring about both sisters while unilaterally considering Maya the devil in this situation is honestly outstanding. The situation isn't perfect and it sucks for all parties, but it's one that tries to find the best outcome for all. I don't understand the vitriol here, honestly. The posters here reek of selfishness and lack of empathy. I'm gonna be honest, you're still messing up. The fact that you want Tia to forgive Maya shows that you truly don't understand what she's gone through, and you're still placing your own selfish desires for the absence of tension over her need for justice and peace. This is so sad for Tia. I hope she heals and puts an incredible amount of distance between you two. Discuss with your therapist why you haven't accepted Tia's boundary and still want her to forgive Maya. Customer asked me to count out a bag of live crickets in front of her. I, 32 female, work part-time at a pet store to supplement my income as my salary of a full-time teacher doesn't always pay the bills. Plus I have a few pets, and 20% off of in-store purchases is rather helpful. Anyway, one of the things we supply are live and frozen feeder animals for things like reptiles, certain aquatic creatures, and invertebrates. These include things like mice, rats, dubia roaches, bloodworms, mealworms, waxworms, superworms, and crickets. The mice and rats are either frozen or live, but either way, they're easy to count and box up for the customer. Roaches, mealworms, waxworms, and superworms are pre-packaged and price-marked, but the crickets are not. Crickets are kept in these large containers with a mesh top, egg cartons for the crickets to climb on and hide in, cricket food, and hydration. This means when customers ask for crickets, which we usually sell by the dozen, we have to count and retrieve them manually while putting them in a plastic bag we then fill with air and tie off to go with the customer. Our method for transferring the crickets is to lightly tap on the egg cartons over a funnel-like object that doesn't have a hole at the bottom. We tap the crickets in, wrap the plastic bag around the end of the funnel, then tip it and lightly tap the crickets into the bag. Some crickets jump in out of order or cling to others, so often customers are given bonus crickets, which we're okay with. It's better than shorting them. So customers are always given the right amount or often more than what they asked for without an increase in price. Most people get this. The customer in this story did not. A woman comes in and she asks for 4 dozen crickets, 48 crickets total. I went to the back, tapped the crickets from the cartons inside the funnel, and then counted them into the bag. As per usual, the occasional extra cricket tumbled or hopped in, probably putting the total to a bit over 50 by the time I was done. I bagged them, tied the bag, took them over to the counter. Now, I don't know if this woman was having a bad day or if she had been stiffed by another store in the past, but she demanded that we count out the crickets in front of her before she pays for them. I explained that it was likely that she got more than what she had asked for, and counting out 48 crickets individually would take a little while. She insisted she wanted to be sure we weren't ripping her off. So I got one of those small plastic cricket keepers and a pair of tongs. I opened the bag, making it deflate and slightly more painful to work with, and inserted the tongs. Delicately, so not to crush the crickets, I grabbed each one with the tongs and started counting slowly, and dropped each individually counted cricket into the critter keeper. So after about 5 to 10 minutes at the counter meticulously counting crickets with tongs, and maybe deliberately taking a little bit longer than I had to out of spite, a line was building up behind the woman and I was getting close to the end of my count. Eventually, I hit the grand total of what she paid for, 48 crickets. And wouldn't you believe it, there were 10 more left over in the bag, almost a whole extra free dozen that she would have gotten for free had she not asked me to count them. I said, "Oh, would you look at that? My mistake. You were right. I did miscount. I'll put these other ones back and ring you up for the 48. I'll be right back." And before she could protest, I wandered off to dump the last 10 crickets back into the cricket container. When I came back to check her out, she was silent, not looking at me, did her best to ignore the irritated looks of the customers lining up behind her while I poured her 48 crickets back into the bag. She paid, then slunk off sheepishly out the door without a thank you or a glance. I then got through the rest of the line quickly and apologized to the customers in line for the wait. I sent them home with some free samples, thanked them for their patience, then continued along with my shift. She never complained, and she did return to the location several times after. She never asked anyone to count the crickets again. Update. Am I the jerk for telling my wife she needs to be accountable for her actions? My wife, 30 female, and I, 35 male, bought our house 5 years ago and it needs work, but time and money are always a constraint. Right now, my wife is not working while she goes back to school, and I'm working second shift as the sole earner. Since my wife is home more than me, she's been handling most of the work that's been done around the house, including dealing with contractors. She comes from a family of do-it-yourselfers who tend to shoot from the hip with projects, while I prefer to have a plan in place before we do any work. And the most recent projects that she spearheaded have been, in my opinion, subpar. Some examples. Our privacy fence gate doesn't close right, and she hasn't gotten the contractor to come to fix it for months. The internet line wasn't buried deeply enough by the contractors, and I think she should have sent them away when they didn't have the right equipment. She decided, without my input, to use a cleanser on our house before restaining it, and the cleanser left streaks in the wood that cannot be covered by the stain. We have a wooden sculpture in our yard that she did not clean, and it's dark and dirty, and it looks bad. She doesn't see anything wrong with it. Most recently, we had gutter work done, and I wanted a gutter put on the back of our new shed. She forgot to tell the contractor where I wanted the downspout, and he put it in the opposite corner, so now the water is just going to collect behind the shed, which is exactly what I wanted to avoid. She called me at work to give me this news, and I spent the rest of the day frustrated. When I got home, I asked what we were going to do about this, and she said something about fixing it ourselves. I told her that it would never be right if we fixed it ourselves, that I already paid for the work to be done right the first time, and we're just throwing away money and time with needing to redo all these projects that she hasn't been doing a good job with. I asked if she even cared about the quality of the work that's being done on the house, and said that maybe she shouldn't be involved with projects anymore on the house unless communication improves. She just sat in silence and slept on the couch without speaking to me. This morning, I asked if she was going to talk to me, and she said, "I don't know." I was exasperated and asked if she could just tell me what's wrong, and she replied, "I'm scared of you." She told me she wished I had approached the issue by looking for a solution, and I told her that she just doesn't want to be accountable for her actions. She said that she just wants us to be partners. I could be the jerk for how I went about telling her about my feelings, but I feel like there's no way for me to give her negative feedback without her freaking out. Am I the jerk for telling her that she needs to be accountable for her actions? Update. I posted this 5 months ago about an argument my wife and I had, and I was determined to be the jerk. Recently, someone commented on that post asking if my wife has left me yet, so I decided to update. A lot of people recognized that the way I spoke with my wife was full of frustration and anger, which was unproductive, but even more than that, it was scary to her. One user had an excellent comment pointing out that I was just blowing off steam and that my priority should be my partnership. We covered a lot of topics in the weeks following that incident. We had a couples therapy session to talk about strategies and communication. I saw one of my coworkers react in anger and frustration instead of taking the time to become calm, and realized from the outside looking in just how unproductive his behavior was. And then my wife showed me a section of one of our self-help books. It's called The 5 Personality Patterns, and my therapist had recommended it to me a while back. We had been reading it together, my wife and I, but then we got busy and we stopped. She picked it back up after our fight and read about the leaving pattern. She underlined a bunch of sections and read them to me, and I finally understood. I grew up in a house where my parents screamed and yelled at each other or picked fights in order to storm out of the house, and that's how I used to interpret my wife's silence, as a way to win the fight. In reality, when she became silent, she was scared. She was stonewalling me or trying to win the fight by manipulating me or trying to avoid taking responsibility. She told me that even though she knows that how I was acting wasn't objectively scary, that her threshold for shutting down is really low. My wife is the sweetest person. I love her so much, and I never wanted to feel like that. This changed my perspective completely. Ever since my realization, our relationship is better than ever. We laugh and tease each other playfully. We've worked on projects together. We've talked about chores and money. We've even had a couple of fights and resolved them quickly and lovingly. Our communication is better because we trust each other. My wife told me that she's never felt safer or more loved than now. I won't say I'm glad the fight happened, but what I realized because of it has been a turning point in our marriage for the better. I want to recognize OP for being the kind of person who can actively look at themselves, hear criticism, understand what they did wrong, apologize, and then change that behavior. Not every partner would be that committed to their spouse. Not everyone would be that respectful to their spouse. It sounds like you two are finding new adventures and joys in life together. Your combined communication skills are to be applauded. Have a fantastic life. Work during my planned vacation? Have fun paying me extra when I leave. I had been working at this company for about 3 years. I had consistently grown in my role and eventually was given a major project to own. Although it required a quick turnaround, I determined I could do it myself and took it on solo, hoping for a promotion. I was able to deliver the project slightly ahead of schedule and with better quality than expected, which allowed us to make a huge sale. The head of the company gave me an award at an all-hands meeting, and my boss let me know I was on track for an end-of-year promotion with a nice pay raise and more responsibilities. However, I was needed in another part of the business, so I had to transfer under a new manager who was notoriously hard to work with. During our first meeting, I brought up that I had a 3-week planned vacation in 4 months. I had never taken vacation before this, so I had 6 weeks saved up and I did not want to start losing it. He told me, of course, that would be fine, and we would be able to make it work. About a week later, we had our first meeting with our product team. They had a new, large project idea and wanted it to be released in just 3 months. As my team looked over the details, we knew this was a 6 to 8 month project at best, and it would be better to deliver it in smaller increments or push out the schedule. My boss was adamantly against both, so throughout the next week, he made us have last-minute 3 to 4 hour brainstorming sessions every day, but he would not even tell us until around 3 p.m., forcing all of us to work late every day that week. At the end of the week, there was no way we could figure out how to deliver everything on the shorter timeline, so my boss asked me to stay behind after the meeting. For another hour, he railed against me, saying I was failing at this project and that he could not see me getting a good annual review in 4 months, and that a promotion wasn't even on the table. This annual review would also include the project I had just received an award for, and it's supposed to encompass 12 months of work, but he was basing this off the first 2 weeks in this new team. At this point, I knew he was ready to use me as a scapegoat for his bad management and started applying elsewhere. We continued working on the project, and sure enough, at the end of 3 months, we were still far from being able to deliver, and my boss was getting heat from up above. Right around this time, I received an offer from another company that would be the promotion I wanted, along with an even larger pay increase. I accepted the offer and negotiated my start date to be after my vacation, which was now only 3 weeks away. That same day, my boss called me into his office and told me, "We need to talk about this vacation." I reminded him that we had talked about it months before and that everything was booked, flights, hotels, etc. He would not let up and told me there was no way I could take 3 weeks off with how behind schedule we were. He told me I could go on my trip, but I could not take vacation, and I would be expected to be online during our business hours throughout the trip, 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. local time in my vacation spot. Cue malicious compliance. Every morning while on vacation, I would log on at 4 a.m., check emails, answer questions on our internal chat, and do the minimum work expected, logging off as soon as it hit 1 p.m., all without burning any vacation. With only 1 week left on my vacation, I requested a conference call with my boss to give him my 2 weeks' notice. He was shocked and attempted to persuade me to stay and complete the project, even bringing up the possibility of a promotion. However, I informed him that I had already accepted a new job offer that was starting soon. I worked my last 2 weeks before moving on to my new job. As my boss had requested that I not take any vacation time, the company had to pay out all of my accrued vacation time, a little less than 7 weeks at that point, including the 3 weeks I had initially planned to take. After I left, the project became short-staffed, and I heard from my former coworkers that it missed 2 more adjusted deadlines. Eventually, the manager was demoted and later let go from the company. Approximately 6 months later, the head of my previous company invited me to lunch and offered me a position taking over my former boss's role. I negotiated an even higher pay increase as well as company equity, and returned to the company for 3 more years. Am I the jerk for choosing my senior cat over my sister and potentially allowing her to become homeless? I will preface this by saying that my mother treated my sister and I differently. I was always less than, while she could do no wrong. She'd always buy my sister everything she wanted, while I wore her hand-me-downs. I moved out at 18, worked through college, went no contact with mom and low contact with sister, and our paths diverged greatly from there. I now work in a field that pays well, while she's a stay-at-home mom. I guess I never quite got over this, and while I know the main jerk is my mother, and my sister didn't really know any better, I still fester negative feelings towards both of them. I found Tom in a bag as a newborn kitten, and I raised him over summer break when I was 13. Then when school started, my mother got rid of him, and I had to go through great and extreme lengths to find out where she had dumped him. It took me a week to find him, and we've been together ever since. For a few months, Tom hasn't really been okay and has been slowly declining. The vet, however, based on the recent blood panel that we did, was confident he still has some time left to live and said that he's by far the healthiest geriatric cat she's seen in a while. Thus, we decided to try out surgery to improve his quality of life, even though he's 21. This surgery comes with a price tag. I'm not in the US, but it's around 3 months' worth of minimum wage in my country. It won't set us back much, hardly an inconvenience, but we'll be frugal just in case complications happen. He's scheduled for Monday, fingers crossed. Anyway, my sister dropped by on Sunday, which was strange. We haven't spoken since she wished me a Merry Christmas on Facebook. Looks like her husband jumped onto the NFT bandwagon, and now they're kind of broke and a few months behind on mortgage payments, and asked if I could help her out with the payments since they're at risk of becoming homeless. I said I'm sorry she's going through this, but this is not a good time for me either, and I listed the reasons above. I don't want to ever be in a situation where my cat's life depends on $100 that I cannot afford to pay. I suggested she get a job and maybe downsize or move in with mom while they get back on their feet. She did not take this well, called me names and a crazy cat lady that's going to end up alone, plus some other not nice words. I kicked her out. My mother and other relatives have been spamming me through the week for being heartless and caring more about an animal than my own flesh and blood. My husband says I could have just given her some cash to avoid the drama, and he's right. I could have. This is why I feel like I might be the jerk. In the end, the main reason I chose not to help her is due to my childhood baggage. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Have you asked the family that's been spamming you how much they are financially contributing towards your sister? Hope the surgery goes well and wish a speedy recovery for Tom. Not the jerk. But next time, just tell her no. She doesn't need to know your reasons. And respond to all the relatives. Thank you so much for letting me know that I made the wrong choice. I will let my sister know that you'll be catching her up on her bills. Between you and X, Y, and Z, she should be able to remain in her home and not get a job while also staying in her house. I suggest you all get in contact with each other to figure out what you can each contribute. You truly are amazing people. I would send the same message with names changed to every one of them. And then I'd create a chat you can jump out of, including your sister, and say, X, Y, and Z have graciously agreed to pay your bills. These people are truly amazing. I'll just get off of this chat and let you guys handle it from here. Then leave and block them all. My girlfriend is furious that I gave money to my mother instead of paying for her college debt. I'm 26, male, and my mom, who's 54, has always been insecure about her body. My mom isn't ugly by any means. She's beautiful in my eyes. But my mom recently had told me that she was considering plastic surgery for a long time, but couldn't because she had to prioritize her money on raising me. She didn't ask me for money or anything. I asked her if she was sure about it. She said she was. So I got a full-ride scholarship to college, and I'm pretty financially stable myself, so I thought it would be nice if I paid for it. My mom said it wasn't necessary, but I insisted because I wanted to do something nice for her. My mom got implants and a facelift, and I paid for it fully. She said she was really grateful and thanked me. Honestly, I was really happy for her because it gave her self-esteem a boost that she needed. She was very happy as well, and everything was fine. But when my girlfriend got to know about this, she was upset. She told me I should have let her know before I decided to do anything. She told me she couldn't believe I wasted my money on something like that. She said it was unfair and that I could have used it to help her pay off her college debt, which would have been more useful. I tried to explain it to her, but she didn't listen and called my mom fake and told me she needs to get over her insecurities.
Most of my friends also took my girlfriend's side on this one and said that helping my girlfriend pay off her college debt is a lot more important than my mom's plastic surgery and are calling me a jerk. I'm not sure if I did something wrong here. I don't see what was wrong with paying for my mom's plastic surgery. It helped her get over her insecurities, and I'm really happy about it because she's feeling better now. So my question is, am I the jerk for this? Thanks. Edit. For answers to some common questions, my girlfriend and I have been together for over a year now, and we decided to move in together a few months ago. Also, I don't share a joint account with my girlfriend or anything, but she thinks I should have helped her pay off her college debt because I am financially doing better than she is. Not the jerk. Unless you're married and this was money from a joint bank account, your girlfriend has absolutely no claim to it. You can use it to help your mom, and you don't owe your girlfriend any explanation and certainly not consultation. ETA. And your girlfriend expecting you to pay her student loan is a major red flag. Your mom probably paid a bunch while raising you. Your girlfriend expects to collect and have you pay her loans just because she's pretty? Major red flags. Everyone sucks here. Financial details are vague. I'd like to assume you're so well off at 26 that this doesn't affect you financially at all, but I doubt it. Considering your financial vagueness, if you're in what you would consider a serious relationship, you discuss big financial moves before making them. It wasn't your girlfriend's main talking point, but you can't trust a partner that makes rash decisions with money if you're planning goals together for the future. Your girlfriend is entitled to say that your money could have gone towards her loans. She took out the loans. You've been together a year. You're not married. Even once you are married, that doesn't mean all your savings go towards her debt. You are not obligated to that, and I would have a sit-down discussion about how she plans on handling her loans down the line. She's right that your mom is insecure though. It's a waste of money for temporary shallow happiness. In a few years, she'll cower against that insecurity yet again until she faces it and undoes the years of beauty product brainwashing. You're the jerk. Those surgeries you mentioned are expensive, like really expensive, and you and your girlfriend live together. Sure, you each have your own separate accounts, but are you planning on getting a nice place with her, starting a family one day, etc.? If you are, then money becomes more of a joint thing. Maybe she's just upset because she feels like you're jeopardizing your future together for your mom's surgery. If you do stay with this girl, I'd say get married, but I know not everyone believes in marriage. Then you have to recognize that partners should be a team, and you should consult your significant other before spending $20,000 to $30,000. I'd be upset too. Untie this knot? Okay, if you insist. When I was a teenager, I spent my summers visiting my mom on one side of the country and every other year her mom, my granny, on the other side of the country. Grammy usually had some project that needed doing, like cleaning gutters, fixing a fence, things like that. This story is from when she wanted some trees chopped down. Volunteer trees, the kind that grow tall and fast but not thick, easily handled with a hacksaw and/or a hatchet if one knows what they're doing. As will become apparent, I was not qualified for that description. Grammy hired a neighborhood teen to help out, and the two of us tackled the first and smallest of the 3 trees. This was when I learned that I was the most qualified of the two of us, so I was in charge of planning. Shockingly, the first tree went smoothly, and we learned how well we worked together. Second tree, no problem. We're feeling like we have a handle on things. We get to the third tree, and just like we did before, we tied a rope towards the top of the tree, tied it off to an old stump to guide the tree or prevent an accident, and got to work chopping into the trunk of the tree. We realized we had a problem when the rope went tight. Backing off to assess the situation, we were a little baffled how the tree started falling the way it did, but accepted that, if not for the rope, we would have dropped this tree onto the nearby fence and Grammy's truck just beyond it. As we were discussing how to get the tree to fall the direction we wanted, Grammy came out to see what the holdup was. We get as far as pointing out the rope when she utters the line, "Oh, I see the problem. You used the wrong type of knot. You needed a slip knot so you could tighten it up as you went." No, that's not the problem. The problem is, here, untie that knot. I'll show you how to tie a proper knot. Nothing we could say could dislodge that idea that we just needed a proper knot. So, confirming that what happened next was directly Grammy's fault, we undid the knot. The knot that was holding up the whole tree. Grammy was halfway into the first step of whatever knot she wanted us to tie before she realized why we weren't listening to her. All 3 of us watched this tree fall, nice and slow, onto the fence. With a mighty crack, the trunk separated from the stump and the tree continued tipping directly onto the roof of Granny's truck.
Silence. Then, finally realizing what we had tried to tell her, Grammy lets out a hearty laugh. Okay, I was wrong. Now finish the job and get the tree off my car. Am I the jerk for leaving a wedding to go eat at McDonald's? Hi, I'm female 25. Recently, my colleague, female 31, invited me to her wedding, which happened yesterday. I was super excited and happy for her. Just in case, I asked her if there was any guest fees. She said, "No, you don't need to pay me anything." On the day itself, everything went well until the reception, dinner time. To my shock, I was presented with a wedding menu that had prices on it. For example, steak, $50. Everything was ridiculously expensive, including the vegetarian options. At first, I wanted to question her because, well, she lied to me that I didn't have to pay for anything. But it was her wedding, and I didn't want to spoil her day by embarrassing her in front of everyone. However, the only other option was to simply not eat, as I didn't bring enough food for both the meal and a ride back. But this was completely unfavorable, as I had skipped my lunch to save space for the wedding meal, and I was pretty hungry. Suddenly, I remembered that I saw a McDonald's about 5 minutes away from the hotel. As tactfully as I could, I asked the bride if I could make a quick stop to McDonald's, as I didn't bring enough money for the reception meal. I said that I'd be back in time for the gift ceremony and cake. I thought she'd agree, but to my horror, she got really upset. She said that she put in so much effort to get this Michelin star restaurant service, yet I still wasn't happy. That I was trying to bring her down by saying that I'd rather eat McDonald's. Alarmed, I said that I didn't mean it that way. I just didn't have the cash for it. She then scoffed, saying, "Whose fault is that?" Although I was trying to keep in my anger, those words really ticked me off. So I told her, "You were the one who lied that I didn't need to pay anything." Getting angry as well, she replied, "What I meant was that there's no attendance fee. You literally assumed that you'd get a free 5-course dinner. Wow, you're cheaper than I thought." With a glare, she asked me to leave her wedding. I did, dumbstruck and rather hurt. And on my way home, I grabbed a Big Mac. Back at home, I told my boyfriend everything, and I asked if I was the jerk. He thought it was a funny story, but said I was the jerk. If I didn't have the money, I could always pay her back later. In his exact words, he said, "You chose the wrong time to be stingy." My other friends agree as well, saying that it was not tactful of me for doing that at the wedding, and although she lied, I should have just brushed it off instead of dampening her happy spirits. After hearing their opinions, I felt quite guilty and embarrassed. However, that one little part of me still thinks that it's justified because 1, she lied to me, and 2, publicly humiliated me. Please help me out. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, but I think you handled it wrong. You shouldn't have asked her if it was okay to leave and get McDonald's. You should have done it and come back. The bride/your colleague does sound like a bit of a jerk, and she shouldn't have humiliated you that way. I've never been to a wedding where I had to pay for my own food, and I've been to some very cheap weddings and some expensive weddings. Next time, you'll know to be prepared. Also, did you buy her a gift? Because if you didn't and showed up to get a free meal, then you're a bit of a jerk. Not the jerk. I've never heard of a wedding where the guests are expected to pay for dinner, especially without any notice. The bride's response is BS too. Attendance fees are not a thing at weddings. You asked and she said there was no cost. The misunderstanding is on her. Diva Chef told me to just stand there and be quiet. Okay. Background. Let me take you back into my past. Again, I'm in the kitchen in a large culinary company/catering company. You get these more often than most. A diva in the kitchen. Could be a cook, a chef, or someone with a lot of attitude. Let me introduce to you Chef Smokey, reason explained in a moment. At the time, he was a line cook with some attitude issues. He had just joined on with us and he acted like he was going to be the next top chef in this company. He came over to our main line, looked things over, and then he came to the prep zone. Now the difference is the prep zone and main line are the types of burners. On the main line, we have gas ranges, 6 in fact. And the prep zone, we have almost all L-shaped counters with induction burners set up. On unusually swamped nights, the prep zone will handle appetizers for the main line. The story. Here comes Chef Smokey about to take the lead on appetizers. Myself and one other person are working hard, but apparently not smart enough. So Chef Smokey grabs multiple pans and puts them on the induction burners. He revs them up super high and adds his olive oil. Now there are 2 glitches in this scenario. Issue 1. Induction burners. These older ones use specific pans and special setup to work, so they can be temperamental when they do work. And if you use the wrong pan, either the pan won't work or they act up. Issue 2. Olive oil smokes faster than the normal canola, vegetable, or mixed oil we have on site. Recipe calls for olive oil. We don't pump our induction burners to super high, especially when you're using pans not made for it. The pans work, but they can run super hot, overload the induction burner, or not work at all. He sprays oil onto all 5 pans he has on super high. He gives us a super conceited look. Me. You might not wanna, Chef Smokey. Zip it. Me. But you seriously might not, Chef Smokey. Just be quiet and watch. Me. With all respect, you... I reach to lower the settings on the induction. He nearly spanks my hand. Just stand there and be quiet. Malicious compliance. Okay, learn the hard way. Chef Smokey starts his first pan dropping his appetizer to cook. It comes out great, but as he reaches for his second pan, the oil has already insta-burned. Pan 3, 4, and 5 are also having burnt oil in them. They're smoking. So being a resilient, smart, and problem-solving human he is, he wipes the pans and sprays oil in them. Oil insta-burns. Okay, he tries a new tactic. Chef Smokey drops oil and then drops his appetizer material at the same moment. Nice try. His appetizers instant burn because his oil was already burned quick. He goes through this cycle about 3 times of burning product pretty fast. He gets raging upset. So I try to stop him, but he's got to try one last time. Burns it again. He lays his oil in his pans again. I lean in and say, "Hey, Smokey the Bear, your oil's burning again." Aftermath. Chef Smokey backs off. Then it's each man to a pan. Heat turned to the moderate level. While Chef Smokey starts the re-prep of the lost product he had burned through, let me note he burned most of the day's product, so he was going to spend the day re-prepping. He spent a good day silent. The guys in the kitchen used my nickname I gave him. Some called him Smokey the Bear, and some called him Chef Smokey, and it stuck till he quit. Am I the jerk for refusing to miss some of my kids' events when my ex-wife's husband asked? I share 2 kids, Indy, who's 10, and Colby, who's 8, with my ex-wife, Thora. We've remained very close, and she and I don't follow a strict parenting plan. We do our best to have the kids see us both as much as possible. We celebrate every birthday, every Christmas together, and we show up to support our kids together as much as we can make it work with our jobs. Our families are also still very tight. The kids love it. Sometimes it will be my parenting time, but they want Thora, and so they spend that day with her or vice versa. Works so well for the kids. Thora married Michael in November 2021. He and I got along in the beginning. He clearly loved Thora and he was great with the kids, which is what Thora and I cared about most. But then this past summer, some things changed with Michael. An example is Indy was singing and playing an instrument at this little talent show his summer camp set up. Thora and I both went, so did Michael, who took the day off work. Michael did not look happy to see me, and once Thora was not within earshot or sightline, he was visibly tense, and I swear he groaned at some point near me. Then Thora had to go out of state to see a friend of hers who was very sick. The kids chose to stay with me, and I don't believe Michael was happy about that. I tried to ask him about it, but he swore things were fine. In November, Indy and Colby had a busy month with different standout things within extracurriculars in school. I was lucky enough to attend 9 out of 10 of them, with Thora attending 8 out of 10. Michael got to attend 3 out of 10. All 3 were ones I could attend, and it felt very much like he didn't want me there. Late last month, when Michael and I were the ones attending a school function for the kids, he asked me to show up to less of the kids' events and let him and Thora do some of that stuff with the kids as a family. I told him they already do. He said not when I'm around, that I'm getting in the way of him being a parental figure for the kids. I told him he was a parental figure and the kids love him. He said they will never consider us equal until they see him instead of me at some of these events. He said it's important for the more stable family unit of 4. I told him I was not willing to miss the kids' events. He did not take it well and accused me of interfering and alienating their chances of a family unit. He texted me after the event with things he wanted me to miss, including Indy's elementary school graduation in May. I told him it was not happening. He told me Thora wanted this too. Thora knew nothing of this and told me the kids would be so upset if we did what Michael wanted, which I knew also. She was angry at Michael. Michael's angry at me still. He called me a jerk. I don't want to believe I'm the jerk, But I know this is not the norm for every divorced parent situation, and it makes me ask if I am the jerk for not letting them have some of those events with just them. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You and your ex are doing everything you can to put your kids first. Don't let this guy's insecurities get in the way of that. You're even in agreement that he shouldn't get to decide how the two of you are co-parenting. Not the jerk. He doesn't get to tell you, their biological father, to leave the room for he who only has been around for a couple of years. Why would he ask you to step aside from being a present father? He's a jerk, and lying to you about what your ex said shows him to be a liar too. Gaslighting his way to you being a less present father? Yikes. Definitely not the jerk. They will never consider him equal to you because he's not. You are their father, he's their stepfather. He should not have married Thora if he could not handle that role. Never touch your truck again? You got it, neighbor. I, 59 male, live in a major city in Ontario, Canada. I live in a small subdivision and have 5 neighbors total on my street. For the past few years, during the winter, when we're getting a lot of snow or bad storms, as I'm leaving for my overnight shift at around 8 to 9 p.m., I'll put my wife's windshield wipers up on her car and do a quick walk around to my other 5 neighbors and put their windshield wipers up on their cars. Obviously not if they're outside or something, but if it looks like they're in for the night. Many of them forget to do this, as many of them have kids, and it typically slips their minds, and their wipers will be frozen to their car in the morning. It's just something nice that I like to do to look out for my neighbors. They're always grateful of this and they thank me for it. Many of them started doing it too, and there will be nights where I'll forget to put mine up and my wife's up, and in the morning one of the neighbors has done it for us. Anyway, recently one of our neighbors moved and a new family moved in as of last week. It's a young couple and their 2 kids. The other night I was leaving for my overnight shift at around 9 p.m. It was snowing really heavy, and we were supposed to be getting almost 30 centimeters of snow, and it was freezing out. So I put my wife's wipers up and do my usual quick walk around to the other neighbors. I was hesitant when I reached my new neighbor's house, as I've only introduced myself once, but I did it anyway. As I was putting the second wiper up on their pickup truck, the husband came charging out of his front door, yelling, "Hey, what the heck are you doing to my truck?" I tried to explain to him that I was just putting his wipers up to help him. He continued to scream at me to "Get off my property and don't touch my stuff again." The wife then came out and started yelling at me too. I apologized and started walking away. Some of my other neighbors heard the commotion and came outside to see what was happening. They tried explaining to him too that it's just something we do. Both of them weren't having it. Fast forward to this morning. I'm arriving home from my overnight shift, and as I'm walking in, I see the wife of this couple struggling outside to break the ice off the windshield wipers of the truck. Guess she was trying to take her kids to school and the wipers were frozen solid on the car. She sees me and yells over, "Hey there, do you mind giving me a hand, please?" I look over to her and yell back, "No, sorry, thought I was told to never touch your truck again, ma'am," and walked back inside. She yelled back at me, "Wow, jerk." Told my wife about this. She thinks I should have helped her because she was just trying to get her kids to school. I disagree, as I was just following what they told me. It's always funny when people like that get exactly what they want and they still complain. Well, these neighbors seem like they already have the entire neighborhood disliking them already. That didn't take long. A student's malicious compliance backfires. This is a story from one of my college friends, Zach, and how he one day decided to jokingly comply with a professor's request only to have it shot right back in his face. So for quick background, Zach and I were both students in our university's department for fields such as animation, game design, and film. Since Zach and I studied similar fields, Zach studied game design and I studied animation, we were both required to take a series of classes called 3D modeling with a professor I'll call Professor Rick. Rick was a one-of-a-kind professor who was not only experienced in the field, but also a very understanding and approachable man who knew how to make the subject fun and easy for all of us. 3D modeling, as you'd probably expect, was a very project-heavy class. Each month or so, you'd be assigned a project. Let's say, for example, the project is a fully detailed and functioning lamp model, which you would work on both in and out of class throughout the month. You'd also be required to submit your current progress online each week for feedback and an easy A as long as you had shown you were making progress. Classes would usually be spent talking about the next part of the project and then working on them. As long as you were actually doing the work, Listening to Rick's feedback and actively improving, the class was an easy A. Pretty simple, right? Anyway, the story begins about a week after one of these projects started. One day, Zach's laptop suddenly had massive technical issues and needed to be repaired. While he was assured the issue could and would be fixed, he wasn't able to get the laptop back before the following week, after the deadline for the upcoming progress report was due. Not only was this a problem because Zach couldn't access the progress he had already made on the project, but also because these projects required a very specific type of software that you couldn't access on any normal school computer. These projects also required hours to work on, so he couldn't just borrow a laptop to use to finish the project. So Zach had no choice but to talk to Professor Rick about the issue. Thankfully, Rick understood what was going on because, like any person would in this industry, he knew how unpredictable technology could be and that issues tended to happen. On top of that, he knew already that Zach had been working on his project in class, so he knew Zach wasn't lying. So when Zach asked what he could do for the upcoming progress report, Professor Rick said, "Just submit whatever you've got and I'll grade it. Don't worry about it." Now, Zach knew what Professor Rick probably wanted. Since we were required to submit progress reports each week, Zach could have easily used a campus computer to download a previous file and resubmit it with no issue. However, Zach had another idea. See, Zach is a huge fan of dry humor. So was Professor Rick. So Zach thought it would be funny to submit something different for Professor Rick instead of what he'd expect. So he submitted a simple one-page Word document with "Sorry" in big letters written in the middle. He then left a comment attached to the submission saying, "Sorry, I didn't think you'd care what I turned in, so I gave you this." Zach then moved on with his day. Professor Rick said nothing to him about it, and about a week passed. Like I mentioned before, most of these projects were guaranteed A's, so when Zach saw the notification that the grade was submitted, he didn't think to check right away. Then one day, while looking through the app we used to submit our work, he noticed something off. His grade for 3D modeling, which was once an A, was now a C-. He was completely confused, and upon investigating what could be the cause, he noticed one grade that looked very different. The progress report received a grade of -200 out of 100. Zach was absolutely stunned. How the heck was a negative score even possible? He quickly checked the submission and saw underneath his comment was a reply from Professor Rick that said, "Sorry, I didn't think you'd care what grade I gave you, so I just gave you this instead." Zach panicked, thinking he had made Professor Rick angry, and as soon as the next class started, he approached the professor with his laptop open to the grade to ask what the heck was happening. But before he could speak, Professor Rick saw the grade, saw Zach's face, and started laughing. He laughed hard. Zach then realized what was going on, and he started laughing too. The grade was changed to a 100 the very next day. I genuinely loved my professors. Am I the jerk for not canceling my own plans when my husband's got ruined? I'm 31, female. My husband, Ryan, is 39, male. His brother and 2 friends were supposed to go up to their friend's cabin for a long weekend. They were supposed to leave this afternoon, but unfortunately, 2 of them got sick this morning, so the trip has been canceled. I have not been able to take any type of vacation in over a year, and it doesn't look like that'll be an option anytime soon. So when my husband told me about the trip, I thought it would be an excellent time to also take Friday and Monday off and have a staycation for myself. I went on a mini shopping spree at Lush, bought special groceries for myself, planned a hike and a girls' craft night and cocktail party, and found my favorite old movies for a movie night. Ryan and I like a lot of the same things, but I wanted to take this opportunity to do and cook all of the things that I like, but he doesn't. Ryan suggested that since he now has the weekend free, I could rearrange mine and we could have extra time together. I love my husband and will absolutely make time to spend with him, but I still want to keep all of my plans. He's upset because he feels I'm being selfish, especially on the food aspect. I do all of the cooking and cleaning, and the way we share our finances reflects that, 80-20. So he feels like me cooking things for only myself for 4 days is breaking our agreement and unfair to him. He also doesn't want my friends drinking here because I told them that they could stay the night and we'd have brunch in the morning. He wants me to cancel the cocktail part of the evening and only have the craft night because it's not right for an adult to have a sleepover party when their spouse is home, and the potential for us to be loud and obnoxious is inconsiderate to him. I'm prepping eggplant parmesan and salad right now for my dinner tonight. He despises both of these, and I suggested he take himself out for dinner as a treat, and he got really annoyed with me and left the house. I don't know if I should feel bad or not. I think he's expecting too much from me to always be on. Not the jerk. OP, I'm sorry. I missed the part of the post where your plans got canceled because your friends got sick. It sucks that your husband's plans got canceled, but why would you renege on your plans and agreements with your friends to do these things? Him being inconvenienced does not mean you and other people have to be inconvenienced. Exactly. I despise it when adults behave like toddlers, but have the nerve to accuse other people of being selfish. It's really unnecessary and off-putting. OP, enjoy every bit of your staycation. There's no emergency here. He can occupy himself for a few days. He's not an infant, and just because his plans fell through doesn't mean yours should. I'm also concerned that if you give in, he may make a habit out of this. Nip it in the bud, stand your ground. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Ryan is being spoiled and selfish. The fact that he didn't encourage you to keep your plans and didn't offer to vacate the house while your friends are there is disappointing. He seems super entitled, and I'm sorry he's unable to put you first this one time. His childish temper tantrum at the end is also quite emotionally manipulative. If he's unable to put your wants and plans first this one time, you've got a spouse issue that you need to seriously address. You're the jerk. Call me old-fashioned, but back before my husband passed, if at any time his plans were canceled, I would have gladly canceled mine as well. When you're in a committed marriage, you act as one unit. You're no longer separate. You become one flesh and act as a united front. The fact that so many in the younger generation refuse to accept this is why you're all getting cheated on and divorced. I told both of my daughters time and time again that they needed to be more supportive in their marriages, yet they both just laughed at me. Well, now they're both divorced and their ex-husbands are remarried to sweet supportive partners, while both of my daughters are still hopelessly single. I remind them every day that their marriage's failing was on them, and I warn them over and over. You know the saying, if you don't treat your man right, another woman will. Stop fixing the photo printers during Christmas rush? Sure, why not? To preface, I used to work in the photo lab of a very prevalent retail pharmacy. You know the one. I was good, fast, efficient, and always provided the most excellent customer service. Customers loved me. I adapted official procedures to make them better and improve the final product. And I loved the photo printers. If you've worked in a 1-hour photo lab, you know that no one fixes those things. They jam constantly, overheat, never get replaced or updated. They'd break at least weekly, if not more. Same thing with the kiosks and receipt printers and POS system. It's a nightmare. I haven't worked there since 2017, and they finally updated the pin pads 6 years later. Because the printers would break so often, and I had experience fixing printers from when I worked at a school, I just whip out a screwdriver, open them up, and fix them myself. It was faster and easier than putting in a ticket, and it meant I could keep churning out orders during peak instead of being 1 to 2 printers down at all times. Now, shortly before the holidays, we got a new assistant manager. He had previously managed another store, but had to step into a less stressful position due to a heart issue. The guy was a jerk and created stress for himself. He treated team members like garbage, and most people were too afraid to stand up to him. I had a good working relationship with our GM, so I wasn't afraid of this guy, and he would often single me out because of it. At one point during Christmas rush, he caught me with my screwdriver disassembling a printer that had suddenly stopped working. He chewed me out, told me to stop fixing the printer immediately and just put in a ticket. If he caught me fixing a printer again, he'd have to take disciplinary action. Cue malicious compliance. I stopped fixing the printers and just put in tickets. In about a day, we were down to one functioning 4x6 printer that was overworked to heck and back. That printer almost caught fire while I was off shift because no one was able to unjam it. He never told me to stop fixing the printers again and left me alone for the entire rest of the time that I worked there. I ended up being wrongfully terminated due to an ADA leave for a major surgery when corporate never got my paperwork, despite my PT faxing it over, and I found a better job that I love at a company I still work for. Jerk manager ended up getting fired several months later for customer complaints. Am I the jerk for buying lower grade steaks when my in-laws visit and serving my mom and dad Wagyu? My wife and I live far away from both of our sets of parents. We visit them a couple of times a year, and they visit us about the same. My mom and dad love food. They will buy pounds of garlic and leave it in a rice cooker for a month to make black garlic. They plan their vacations around amazing restaurants. My in-laws are lovely people, but boiling chicken drumsticks is fancy for them, and they refuse to eat steak that isn't well done. I discovered this the first time I went to their home for dinner. I wasn't even asked how I like my steak. Everyone got a well-done steak. It took me years to convince my wife to try a medium rare steak. Now she loves them. I bought some beautiful prime steak for them when they came over when we moved in together. I made theirs medium well, and I died a little inside. Her dad took it back to the grill and destroyed it. So now I buy select grade meat. I've been buying some excellent quality Wagyu for when my parents visit. Not every single time, maybe once a year. My wife says I'm being a jerk by not treating both families the same. I don't think I should waste money on great food for them when I know how they'll treat it. I might get downvoted, but honestly, I do not see the point in paying for really expensive steak for someone who's going to want it served as burnt offerings. They certainly won't understand the difference. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. But perhaps you can think of something else your in-laws would appreciate a splurge on. Drinks, desserts, or even an experience that would be meaningful to them. And more importantly, make your wife feel heard, validated, and like her family is important to you. No jerks here, but stop having steak with your in-laws. You can't feed them Wagyu, and I understand why. But your wife can't accept you being snobby about meat and giving her parents meat you know is lower quality on purpose. She's right. It's disrespectful to serve food you see as insulting. So rather than fighting about it until the end of time, understand that steak is not an in-law meal, and find one that you can make with ingredients you respect and that they will enjoy. I don't drink wine. Fermented grapes taste bad to me. My husband and his family drink wine, study wine, are careful with wine selections. It's absolutely wasted on me. They don't make sure to serve me crappy wine. They make sure the freezer has my favorite upscale vodka in it. They're not wrong that wine has lots of nuance and finding good wines is fun. I'm not wrong that I find wine basically undrinkable. You're only a jerk if you demand that someone wins the steak fight instead of putting all of that energy into finding another showpiece meal that you can all enjoy each other's company over. And invite me over for steak. We'll have a blast. Am I the jerk for telling my dad he needs to pay for what his dog did? I, 31 female, agreed to watch my dad's, who's 54 male, dog last weekend. He's not a puppy anymore, and he's a fairly large dog, probably about 90 to 100 pounds. He's also got a lot of energy and can run really fast. That being said, he's not very good at stopping when he runs at full speed. On the afternoon of the incident, I was playing with the dog. We were playing with a tennis ball, and I wasn't throwing it very hard. I'd bounce it on the floor, it would go a few feet away, and he'd catch it and bring it back. Normal stuff. At least it was until he missed. On one toss, he didn't get his mouth around the ball. It took a weird bounce off of his nose, and it happened towards the coffee table where I have temporarily placed my TV until my new TV stand comes in. By now, most of you can probably figure out what happened. Dad's dog went running at full speed towards the ball, crashed into the coffee table, and the TV toppled over and onto the floor. Unfortunately, it fell screen side down, causing it to break against the hardwood floor. The next day, I told my dad what happened. I asked him to replace it because, although it was an accident, it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had the dog there in the first place. He says it's my fault because I shouldn't have been tossing the ball in the first place. He also says he doesn't think he should pay for a new TV. What do you think, Reddit? Am I the jerk here? Edit. Okay, I get it. Don't play ball in the house. Yes, I've heard that. Didn't really need the extra 300 comments telling me the same thing. To give you all some perspective, yes, I do have a large living room. The TV and table were way off and out of the way. Zeus is a large dog. The ball was not being tossed in any general direction of the TV. It bounced that way after it hit his nose. It was the result of several improbable circumstances. I don't mind y'all saying I'm the jerk, but your comments are just getting repetitive and stating the extremely obvious. Why wasn't a park or outside an option? For one, I live nowhere near a park. 2, it was freezing outside. Edit 2. I don't really understand why people think it was a fight. It was a pretty calm and reasonable discussion. I told him about it, asked him if he'd pay for a TV, and he told me I was at fault. I just wanted to see what Reddit thought of it. Didn't realize the collective mindset of Reddit was to just attack someone and cyberbully them for asking an opinion. Lesson learned, I guess. You're the jerk. It's literally your fault. Why were you playing fetch indoors with a big dog? You're the jerk. You were playing ball in the house with what you knew to be an unruly dog. You did this, not the dog. You're the jerk. I'll say the same thing my grandma said to me when my cousin and I were playing in the house and I broke her table. Go outside. My sister refused to babysit my son, so I kicked her out of my house. I, 30 female, live with my husband, male 31, and our son, who's 5. My sister, who's 22, is still in college and had to move in with us 3 months ago because she had some issues with her roommates. Things were going fine until this argument. She also doesn't work, but my parents send her money for textbooks and groceries, but she's barely ever contributed to the household since she moved in with us. We also live in a different state from our parents and family, so I'm basically throwing her in the streets by kicking her out, which would make me a huge jerk. So my son comes back from school at around 3 to 3:30 p.m. My husband works until 6 and I work until 5, although sometimes I have to stay an hour or 2 extra. This is not normal, maybe 3 or 4 times per month when we're behind on a project. We had a babysitter that would wait until he's back. He comes back home via the school bus and would stay with him until me or my husband could come back from work. However, she recently discovered she's sick and she told us that she can't continue working as she has to go through treatment. We thanked her for telling us and wished her to get well soon. I asked my sister to babysit our son until we can get a new babysitter, given that she doesn't have any classes at that time. She told me she never agreed to babysit when she moved in here, and that I should have told her beforehand so she could have found somewhere else to live. I told her that I knew this wasn't our agreement, but this was something exceptional since our babysitter has medical issues. She still told me she can't babysit because sometimes she has to go to the library or to study with friends, and babysitting would limit her hours of studying. I got angry, maybe too angry. So I told her that we never even ask anything from her. We helped her because we wanted to be kind with her, and yet she can't even compromise to just stay for a few hours just until we find a new babysitter. I ended up telling her that she has a week to leave because we will not be providing food or a roof over a jerk like her's head. One of my son's friend's mom is taking care of my son now. They go back to her home together and I pick him up later. My sister tried to apologize, but I told her I don't want to live with her because she showed me her true colors. She also has told our family, and a lot of them are giving me crap for leaving my sister homeless. My husband, my in-laws, and my friends support me, but it feels really harsh that my family isn't on my side. Makes me think I'm a jerk, to be honest. Edit. It wasn't easy to find another person to take care of my son. I had to take 2 days off from work, which will be taken from my next paycheck. Not the jerk. Everyone voting you're the jerk because parents must never ask for help must come from very dysfunctional families. This is not your routinely exploiting her, it's asking for help in a sudden moment of need. My family is normal, and therefore we scramble to help each other when need be. Then again, Reddit has been teaching me that family dynamics in the US are apparently weirdly cold, individualistic, selfish, and transactional. So maybe over there, we would be the weird ones. Not the jerk. You were not asking her to babysit indefinitely, just literally to help you out while you looked for an alternative. She was fine with living with you for free while not contributing at all to the household, and the first time you asked her for temporary assistance with something, she made it clear that she has zero intention of helping you out ever. You are under no obligation to help someone out who would not reciprocate when you need them. You want me to fly 12 hours earlier because it's cheaper? I, 56, male, in the UK, was working in Africa as an operations manager for a large global security company from 2009 to 2014. The country I was working in had been through a long war and was very underdeveloped. Think no paved roads, people living a very traditional African lifestyle. At the time, I'd been working there on a 10 weeks in-country, 2 weeks at home rotation for about 4 years. I'd flown to and from work so often that I had the journey down to the bare minimum travel time, and it worked out the cheapest option for the company because travel days were paid from when I left home. The shorter my journey, the cheaper it worked out for the company. Someone in the head office had looked at cutting down on travel costs, probably to make themselves look good and get promoted. As a result, I got an email after a week at home saying they had changed my normal flight, which was 5 p.m. on Sunday from my nearest UK airport via Amsterdam, then on to Nairobi, connecting with a 9 a.m. flight to the war-torn country on Monday morning. The change was from a 5 p.m. departure to a 5 a.m. departure the same day, same route, and saving about 80 pounds. To clarify, the 9 a.m. flight from Nairobi was the first flight to war-torn country because the destination airport was the only surfaced runway in the country. It had no runway lights or radar, so all flights had to be in daylight. Anyway, I agreed to the flight time change, but they had to move it to the Monday so I don't lose a day at home. All will become clear. They agreed because they still saved 80 pounds on the ticket, so no skin off their nose. Once I got the flight confirmation, I contacted the travel desk asking for hotel and taxi bookings. When they asked why I need these, I explained that to make a 5 a.m. departure required a check-in at 3 a.m. So I needed a hotel at the airport on Sunday night because no trains were running to get me the 3 hours to the airport from home for that time of the morning. The flights they booked would get me into Nairobi for 7 p.m. after dark, so I'd need a hotel there and a taxi each way to and from the hotel to get me onto the 9 a.m. flight on Tuesday. The same flight I would have been on if I'd left at 5 p.m., but a day later. A couple of days go by and I get a phone call from the company travel desk telling me the travel plan was confirmed. I was on the 5 a.m. flight with a hotel reservation at my UK airport the night before, a hotel in Nairobi after landing, and the taxi would collect me in Nairobi and drop me at the airport for my final connection. I asked about the cost saving. They said 80 pounds. I then asked about the hotels and taxis. They replied, "Oh, they don't come out of our budget. That's the operations budget, so you're fine." I was happy. I was arriving back at work a day later, still paid the same amount with a night out in Nairobi to sweeten the deal. My boss, on the other hand, went nuts. Nobody had told him of the changes. My deputy flew out on the plane I flew in on, meaning I didn't get a handover of the work that was going on. On top of that, the cost for the hotels, taxis, and extra days' pay had all come out of my boss's operational budget. I think the total amount added was almost 1,000 pounds. But hey, they saved 80 pounds on the flight cost. Am I the jerk for making my husband do his chores even when his parents are over to visit? I, 29 female, am married to Andrew, who's 34 male. We both work full-time and we have a 2-year-old, Sophie. My in-laws are not bad people, but they believe in very traditional roles when it comes to marriage. My husband also felt this way when we started dating 6 years ago. It was a major deal breaker for me. So before we moved in together, I made it clear I would not both work full-time and then come home and be responsible for all the chores at home. My husband agreed to these terms, but struggled in the beginning, to the point where I moved out and we broke up for about 3 months. It was a bit of an adjustment, but after some time, we found a natural flow to manage our household. His parents are aware of why we had broken up, and they're a bit horrified that I make my husband do the dishes and scrub a toilet. I mostly ignore their glances and faces, but the other night, my mother-in-law actually verbalized their feelings for the first time. After a dinner that I cooked, my husband can cook now, but couldn't when we met. We were sitting around the table enjoying a glass of wine when my husband got up to clear the table. I did not ask, but it is his responsibility if I cook. And I guess he decided to also do the dishes, which he would also be responsible for. It was about 15 minutes after he left the table when my father-in-law asked where he was. I said he was probably doing the dishes so he doesn't have to do them later, and my mother-in-law piped to question why I hadn't cleared the table and why I wasn't doing the dishes. I simply said it was his job to do it, and my mother-in-law said something about how much he hates doing it, and that in her day, she would never make father-in-law do that. I just joked, "Well, I guess I just trained Andrew better." He often says I trained him well as a joke. Mother-in-law and father-in-law didn't laugh, and I changed the subject. The next day, my husband was talking to his mom, and she mentioned how she was upset that he walked away from the table and that I could have done the dishes so they could spend some more time with him. He mentioned that he could have done the dishes after they left, but figured 15 to 20 minutes wasn't a big deal. She doubled down and said that I could have just done it so they could have spent more time visiting. She said my rules are rigid and he has allowed me to wear the pants when he's the man of the house. He defended our setup by saying we both contribute equally to the household. So now I've been thinking, am I the jerk for not picking up the slack when they're over? For reference, my parents also came over and my husband and I still fulfilled our chores, but I normally do the cooking for guests because even though my husband has learned to cook, he's a basic cook. My mom thinks I should just order food or let him cook when they come over, so then I would do the cleanup. Not sure my in-laws would appreciate takeout though. Not the jerk. I wonder if they, for even 1 second, consider the fact that he would like 15 to 20 minutes less sharing time with them because it sounds exhausting. He doesn't take over every job you have when you had family visiting. Why is his family time more valuable than your time with your family? Not the jerk. And mother-in-law needs to mind her own business. You taught him what she should have taught him. You're the jerk. His mom is right. It's obvious you are the one that wears the pants in that house. Would Reddit still be cheering you on if you were the husband and you spoke about your wife this way? She's probably doing the dishes so she doesn't have to do them later. I guess I trained her better. Of course not. Everyone all would be calling you names and saying your wife should leave you. Everyone sucks here. I think you need to be more flexible. You don't tell us how often your husband sees his parents. If it's not often, then I think ideally you should all chat around the table and put chores down the list of priorities. If there was a reason for the dishes being done straight away, then you could all help with them. Your parent-in-laws are awful jerks. That goes without saying. And well done for standing up to them. Making sounds super controlling. If this is your attitude, I wonder about the health and balance of your relationship. Why would you think like this? How does your husband feel about you thinking it's appropriate for you to make him do stuff? In my opinion, you are the jerk for this. Am I the jerk for not telling my boyfriend I own the house we live in? My boyfriend, male 25, and I, female 26, recently decided to move in together. His lease had expired and his roommates were looking to move out with their girlfriends. The rental scene where we live is crazy at the moment and he couldn't find anything close to where he works that fit his budget. We've been together just over a year, so I decided to offer him to move into my place. It's only about a 20-minute commute for him to get to work, and my friend recently moved out to go and live with her parents again, so it was just me in the house. He agreed and he moved in about 3 weeks ago. The issue began when he started to ask how much his half of the rent was. I responded and said rent wasn't an issue and that it's just easier for me to continue with how it was before he moved in. He was taken back, but we agreed to split water, electricity, groceries, etc. 50-50. Last weekend, I had some family over, and my dad was asking me about interest rates and my mortgage. He overheard this conversation, and after my family left, we had an argument. He was upset that I didn't tell him that I owned my home. He feels as if I lied to him and deceived him. He's upset because he feels like I betrayed his trust. I do see where he's coming from, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I was eventually going to tell him, I just didn't think I absolutely had to tell him in that moment. Most of my friends are telling me that I should have told him before he moved in, but a few of them firmly believe that it wasn't a huge deal. Edit. This was the only thing my man didn't know about me. Owning my home is a privilege I never thought I'd ever achieve, so when I tell people, I feel uncomfortable because I don't want it to appear like I'm flexing. Finances were something that my parents always told me shouldn't be discussed. I don't know specifically how much he makes, and the same goes for him. Also, we are good. I've profusely apologized and admitted it was dumb to not be truthful and forthcoming, and because he's the greatest guy ever, he's forgiven me. Not the jerk. You aren't married to him, you're not charging him rent, and there's no pressing need for him to know you're buying the house. Tell your friends to lay off. If he can't handle the fact that you're buying a house and he can't even rent one, send him on his way. I don't even understand this story. Why would you not share with your boyfriend of over a year that you own the house he just moved in? You're the jerk in any case because you don't hide things from a partner. Especially when he moves in. How do you not let someone know the terms of their house? Is there a landlord? How long is the lease? Oh, you own it? That's relevant to him living there. On the other hand, what kind of irresponsible dimwit is he to not ask these questions? He just moved all his stuff into a new house without having any idea who owned it or how he was going to afford it. He clearly doesn't have renter's insurance. You're the jerk. He seems like he wants to have a solid, respectful relationship with you. His asking, unprompted, how he could contribute to the rent was really cool of him, and that probably should have been the time to tell him the truth. Before he moved in would have been better. Privacy or not, actively hiding that you own the home he now lives in makes it seem like you don't trust him and or think he'd take advantage of you if he knew. Finances were something that your parents always told you shouldn't be discussed? That's not really true. Sure, we don't discuss finances with strangers or acquaintances, but there are exceptions. Life partners are one of these. You have let him into your house and your life. Letting him know that you are paying a mortgage is not a lot of detail, and it would have been warranted if you see him as a potential life partner. You were giving mixed signals. You're the jerk. Am I the jerk for refusing to rent to my pregnant friend? I, 32 female, grew up in a low-income household and was determined from an early age to start investing and owning real estate. I graduated from pharmacy school with minimal debt and bought my first rental property. I currently own 4 rental properties with my fiance. We both learned how to remodel and fix basic things to keep costs low. We use the rental property money to invest in stocks and are looking into buying a 5th property. My best friend, 32 female, of 15 years, has been married to her husband for 3 years, and they have 1 kid and 1 on the way. Their landlord has decided to evict them. He's given them 60 days to find a new place. They've asked if they could live in one of my rental properties. The problem is, they're not very clean people, and that's one of the main reasons for their eviction. My friend has 4 cats, and they go to the bathroom everywhere. On their clothes, sofa, beds. They also tend to scratch the walls and cabinets. She says it's just because they're jerks. Their current home is on the brink of being on a hoarders episode. Her husband spends his free time playing video games and does not try to help in cleaning or doing any of the chores. My friend has also asked if we could give her a discount on the rent since they're about to have their 2nd baby. Both of them work, but my friend's job will not pay her the whole time she's on maternity leave. I told her I could give her a temporary reduction on the rent, but she would not be allowed to have the cats. She said they're like her kids and she couldn't get rid of them. She said that would be like asking her to get rid of her kids, and I'm the jerk for even suggesting it. I told her those were my stipulations. I've been fortunate that my tenants with pets are respectful and clean up religiously after them. She currently is not talking to me and telling our other friends that it's my fault she's about to be homeless. A couple of friends have said I should make an exception, but I've put so much time and money into these homes. So, am I the jerk for telling my friend she can't move in with her cats? Not the jerk. Never mix business and friendship together. Not the jerk. And honestly, this was a choice between losing this friend now or losing them later after they ruined your stuff and you had to evict them. Cats going to the bathroom everywhere is not normal. It's either health, stress, or lack of proper litter care. That's not okay, and it's not healthy for humans, especially pregnant ones, nor is it healthy for the cats. Honestly, I wouldn't rent to someone that was evicted regardless of their cats. Not the jerk. My Karen neighbor feels entitled to camp on my land. I own 16 acres of woodland behind my house, and it's very clearly my property as there are signs up stating that it is private property. I'm generally good with people walking through it, taking their dog for a walk, or hiking, or even local kids playing there as it's a safe place and beautiful. And so long as they don't cause any damage or mess with the trees, I see no reason to get upset over this. An issue came up, however, tonight when I was on a walk and I saw a fire through the trees. I admit I panicked, thinking a dog walker had been out and tossed a cigarette, or some local teens were setting fires for fun. I rushed out to check on it and tried to put out the fire and found one of my neighbors camping with her boyfriend and friends. It was a group of 5 people in their mid-20s, and they had a roaring campfire going. They got startled by me rushing up to them and asked me what the heck I was doing. I asked them the same question back and told them they couldn't camp here and they had not asked permission to do so. This led to some laughter and protests saying that they were doing no harm and to lighten up. I told them to put the fire out and get off my land. I didn't want to risk a campfire there as it could easily get out of hand, especially when the group manning it were more than a little drunk. They ended up refusing, stating they weren't going anywhere and were not doing anything wrong, so I went home and called the police to get them off my property. They were made to leave and break up their camp. Am I the jerk for this? They probably thought it was okay, as I'm good with letting people use my land in general. I maybe could have handled it better, but I'd gotten a fright seeing the fire and how they responded. It really just got to me. Dog walking and camping are 2 very different things. They should have asked for permission, and anyone who says lighten up when confronted with trespassing deserves to have the police called on them. Their entitlement and attitude is to blame, not you. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. They literally started a fire on your property. This is how bushfires start. Drunk people. Is it not illegal to start fires on other people's land? OP. It very likely is. I don't know all the specifics of the law, but the police were not amused when I told them what was going on and were quick to come over. Won't approve my purchases? Okay, I can work with that. I was a one-man IT shop at a small manufacturer. I had been there for years. I was actually the 3rd employee ever hired, and now the company was like 120 people. I was very frugal, but in smart ways. I got a lot done for little money and always was looking out for the company. The owner recognized and respected this.
Anyhow, we had gotten big enough where I didn't report to the owner anymore, and I was assigned to report to an inexperienced accountant who got her degree from some sketchy online school. She was going to change the world. I used to be able to just buy anything I wanted because the owner knew whenever I asked for a company credit card that I had already done my homework and it would be good for the company. Well, now, if anything was over $500, I had to go through this process with her to justify it. It wouldn't bug me, except that she had no real business savvy or common sense. It was just painful to me to try and explain the most obvious things to her, and she would fight it just because of power tripping or something. Example, I was trying to justify having at least one computer loaded up and ready to go as a hot spare for when someone's broke. She balked at having $1,500 sitting on a shelf unused. I tried to explain that about once a month someone's computer would break. All she could see was the $1,500 sitting unused most of the time. She couldn't understand the real cost of a broken computer, that the person could no longer do their job effectively. Parts not getting ordered, jobs not getting expedited, emails not getting returned, me having to drop everything to react to this situation, overnighting in parts. The true impact cost to the company was several hundreds of dollars every month. She couldn't see that having a spare would pay for itself in half a year or so. After a half an hour of fighting over this, I had an epiphany. I handed her requisition approval forms to her, told her she was right, and left. Any purchases under $500 didn't need any approvals at all. Now, nothing I ever bought was over $500. I didn't buy a spare computer, I bought 3 as parts and assembled them into computers. Servers? Network storage? Why justify to a bean counter who wouldn't understand anyway? Just buy more parts and assemble yourself. Dual monitors for everybody. Bought one at a time. Explain to her that toilets typically have less than 20% usage, but when you need one… Fun fact, the typical car only spends 6% of its life being driven around. The other 94% of the time, it's just an expensive paperweight. And when her computer finally breaks, tell her, sorry, we don't have a spare computer ready to go, so you'll have to wait while we fix this one. Should take about 5 to 10 days to get your computer working again. Shouldn't affect your productivity, right? I'm sure your supervisor will understand. Call me unprofessional? Okay, good luck finding another instructor. I realize today there are not enough stories on here about teachers and malicious compliance. So as a teacher of 2 decades, I decided it was time to write out mine. First and foremost, this is a story about a toxic workplace. This could happen in any business in the world. It just happened to occur in a school. Many moons ago, my school was having a massive shift in priorities and focus. We were a rural school, so new principal assigned to the building, pupils being redistricted, mass retirements, several people were being pushed out and run off by the incoming principal. A good number of people quit because of the toxic work environment, but I was not in a position to do so. At the time, I had a unique schedule. I taught mostly dual credit courses to juniors and seniors, but I also taught one course of students with SEN, SPED issues. The dual credit courses required a specific advanced degree, as I was essentially teaching college credits in the high school. This detail will become essential later. At my school, we would be assigned support teachers to give additional help to students with SEN, SPED services. That support was not allowed to teach, but would typically share a classroom with the content teacher. I was usually unconcerned with who my assigned support was, as I'm a laid-back person who can work with just about anyone and I don't care about sharing a classroom. But there was one male support teacher who was not allowed in my room or near me in the hall, ever. For the sake of this story, we'll refer to him as Jerk. If ever a man knew how close he could get to harassment without crossing the line, it was him. Heck, sometimes he did cross the line. I made dozens of complaints, but nothing was ever done as I wasn't the target of his comments. The school year in question, Jerk was assigned to the most experienced teacher in the building. She was set to retire at the end of the year. Coupled with her no-nonsense attitude, the powers that be thought she could keep him in line. It took 3 weeks, and she threatened to quit if Jerk was not moved out of her classroom. Fearful of losing another teacher at the start of a chaotic year, Jerk was assigned to me as my support teacher. I found out when he walked into my room, announced that we would be buddies now, and made a crude joke about how he could domesticate me. I immediately left the school sick and called my principal about the matter. He informed me in no uncertain terms that I could not refuse to work with someone just because that person made me uncomfortable. I reminded him of the previous complaints I had made. He snapped at me a bit, telling me he could not believe what an unprofessional child I was being. I was told to come up with a legitimate reason Jerk shouldn't be in my class or shut my mouth and make it work. After hanging up the phone, the malicious compliance began. You see, I did have a legitimate reason. Because of a health issue I have had for my entire life, enduring extended periods of stress and anxiety can really hurt me. I even carry medicine with me to lower my heart rate just in case. Step 1 was to call my doctor, who brought me in the very next day after I explained what was going on. She took my blood pressure, faxed a medical letter to my school immediately, and signed me out of work for 6 weeks since I had 6 weeks of leave earned at this point. Step 2 was to literally stop doing anything. Usually when a teacher goes out, lessons are pulled from other members of the school who teach the same content. Unfortunately for them, I was the only person in my building teaching dual credit. A few phone calls by my principal to the surrounding schools taught him what I already knew. I was the only person teaching these courses out of 11 high schools. There were no lessons to be found. I'm not sure what they gave my students to do during that time, but it surely wasn't the correct work. Step 3 was to let 2 or 3 of the parents know what was going on. I never directly told them, but a friend of a cousin of a neighbor might have heard about my health issues and passed the information along. Here's the point in the story where you think I'm about to tell you I enjoyed my 6 weeks paid vacation and went back to work, right? Oh no, the malicious compliance continues. A week before I'm scheduled to return to work, my principal calls me up. Standard well wishes about my health are extended, after which he says that he hopes the weeks away from the building have cleared my mind and helped me realize how hysterical I was acting. He continued by telling me that regardless of my feelings, I would continue to have Jerk as a support teacher. I asked him if he was ready to lose a teacher over this, and he laughed and hung up. Knowing that this was probably going to happen, I already had a doctor's appointment set up for phase 2. Because my health issue is explicitly and clearly covered by the ADA, my doctor issued me reasonable accommodation paperwork to give HR. Essentially, I was to be allowed to teach in the least stressful environment possible, as determined by myself and my supervisor, along with a doctor's note restricting me to teaching duties that could be performed at home because of the excessive stress currently in the building. I checked with a lawyer to make sure my contract was airtight. It was, and I delivered the paperwork to the head of HR, whose kid I taught. I also contacted my college supervisor, whose kid I taught, to inform her that as of Monday, I would have been absent for more than 20% of the seat time for my courses, thus rendering those credits invalid. Over the weeks, she had pieced together what was going on, despite the school refusing to communicate any information with her, and she was furious. She may have told other parents what was going on, which resulted in dozens of calls to the school within a few days. By Monday, my accommodations were approved. I was allowed to teach my classes virtually from my home to save the embarrassment of canceling dual credit courses, and I rode out the year at home before transferring districts at the end of the year. I never spoke to or saw Jerk again.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.